Chapter 5:12. There was only one thought in Qin Wushuang's mind, and that was to kill Luo Ting. If he let Luo Ting live, he would pose a great threat to him. Luo Ting's mentality could no longer be estimated by ordinary people. Before the conflict had been ignited, this Luo Ting had already dealt with Qin Wushuang's relatives in the human countries. Now that the conflict had completely intensified, once Luo Ting escaped with his life, he would undoubtedly seek revenge. With this experience, Qin Wushuang was already extremely familiar with Luo Ting's style. Therefore, he would never give Luo Ting this opportunity. He did not want to make him regret it. Luo Ting sped up a few times and realized that he still could not shake off his pursuer. Although they were 200 or 300 miles apart, the other party's spiritual perception seemed to be able to lock onto his position. He followed him relentlessly and relentlessly. Luo Ting was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He had never thought that there would be a day when he would be chased by Qin Wushuang. Everything was like a dream, a complete nightmare. A martial artist from the human countries that he had looked down upon from the bottom of his heart had chased him all over the place. He could not use words to describe his depression. With one in front and one behind, the two parties had always maintained this distance. After all, Qin Wushuang had just refined the purple cloud in yang wings and could not unleash its greatest effect. Thus, it was already an extraordinary performance to be able to maintain this extreme speed. However, after the two parties had chased for a day and a night, without even the blink of an eye, they had already flown out of the territory of the Orderly Mountain Prefecture and entered the territory of the Judge Mountain Prefecture. After entering the Judge Mountain Prefecture, Qin Wushuang slowly regained all of his memories. However, currently, Qin Wushuang was in a much better state than Luo Ting. It was because from beginning to end, Luo Ting had been supporting himself alone. On the other hand, Qin Wushuang was using a battle of attrition. First, he brought the three great spiritual beasts into the sealed scroll. After chasing for a while, he chose to take a break and summoned one horn mystical horse, the spiritual beast with the fastest sprinting speed. Qin Wushuang let Du Hua mystical horse carry him on his back. He could take the opportunity to recover his vitality and get enough rest. When the one-horn mystical horse reached a certain level and started to get tired, Qin Wushuang switched to the hissing sky phoenix. This method of taking turns to fight gave them a reasonable amount of rest. But on Luo Ting's side, such a good thing did not happen. Luo Ting was exhausted from running for his life. He was so tired that his primordial spirit was about to explode. However, he discovered that the pursuers behind him were still as lively as ever. Luo Ting was simply depressed to the extreme, but he simply did not have the time to observe the pursuers, so his heart was angry and puzzled at the same time. This Qin Wushuang's cultivation is far inferior to mine. How is it possible for him to keep chasing after me? Could it be that his body is made of iron and won't get tired? However, Luo Ting did not believe it. He felt that with Qin Wushuang's cultivation realm, there was no reason for him to be more resistant to wear than him. However, that was the truth, and it made him even angrier. While he was flying, Luo Ting saw the continuous rolling mountain range in front of him. Indeed, there were 5 towering mountain peaks. It was that divine finger mountain, the territory of the primary central sect. Luo Ting thought. Although that primary central sect does not have any relationship with the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, being a disciple of the sect, if I were to send a distress signal to the primary central sect, how could they not help me? When he thought here, Luo Ting had an idea and rushed towards the direction of the divine finger mountain. Currently, he was already somewhat tired. If he did not get some rest, as long as a fresh force appeared, it would destroy all of his defensive lines. Thinking here, Luo Ting had already flown to the sky above the divine finger mountain. Just as he was about to dive down, he saw a surge of hostility from below. In fact, a wave of extremely sharp murderous intent was rushing up from below. Luo Ting looked down from the sky and saw that inside the Divine Finger Mountain, a large group of martial artists were engaged in a fierce battle. Both sides had invested a large amount of military power and elite warriors that made Luo Ting feel waves of fear and trepidation. In fact, a life-and-death battle was happening at the Divine Finger Mountain. Indeed, the two parties involved in the battle were the Dark Green Cloud Taoist sect and the Primary Central sect. Both parties had sent out all their elite warriors and were engaged in a fierce battle. Before Luo Ting could rush down, he was stunned by that wave of murderous intent. Although it was a battle between two major sects between the third and second rate, the strongest elite warriors inside also possessed the strength of the perfect void martial stage. With such investment of power, Luo Ting could not get in. He only heard a loud shout from below. Irrelevant people, avoid the Divine Finger Mountain when you pass by. If you don't want to die, stay away. Today is the doomsday of the Primary Central sect. Whoever wants to be buried with us, come down. This was the warning from the Dark Green Cloud Taoist sect. Clearly, the battle between both parties had progressed to a white-hot state. Luo Ting did not give up and wanted to find a remote corner to hide. He wanted to use this battle to confuse the attention of Qin Wushuang and the others. Before he had finished this idea, the warning from below rushed up again. Outsider, if you take one more step, you will die. Instantly, Luo Ting felt a wave of gigantic pressure rushing up from below. Inwardly, he gave a long sigh and knew that he could not count on this Divine Finger Mountain. Immediately, he continued to fly forward. He was also extremely familiar with the terrain of this area. He knew that if he kept flying forward, he would arrive at the wild flame cliff of the Crest Mountain. There was a cluster of natural stone forest that was richly endowed by nature. Perhaps he could make use of it. When he thought here, Luo Ting forcefully overcame that trace of exhaustion and sprinted with all his strength. With both parties chasing each other, Qin Wushuang and the others had gradually shortened the distance between them and Luo Ting by relying on the advantage of taking turns to tire him out. Apparently, Luo Ting was an arrow at the end of its flight. These 2 or 3 days of sprinting with all his strength had consumed his spiritual qi to a critical point. If he sprinted again, he would collapse instantly. From afar, Qin Wushuang spread out his spiritual perception completely. He already felt the exhaustion of Luo Ting's temperament. He said with great joy, "That Luo Ting is already struggling. I estimate that he will stop soon. Everyone, sprint with all your strength. This time, we must not let him escape again." Qin Wushuang knew the terrain. He also knew that the best landing point would be the Crest Mountain. According to his conjecture, Luo Ting should be thinking of landing at the Crest Mountain. However, at this time, Qin Wushuang and the others were like fresh troop. They were full of vigor and were full of vigor. They immediately spurred their horses and chased after Luo Ting in a spurt of energy. Sure enough, just as Qin Wushuang expected, Luo Ting landed near the Crest Mountain and restrained all his aura. When Luo Ting landed, his flight path and spiritual energy fluctuations were completely lost. When he merged his body into the busy mountain, it would be very troublesome to find him again. However, Qin Wushuang knew that Luo Ting must have landed at the Crest Mountain, because his flight path and spiritual energy fluctuations came to an abrupt stop when he reached the Crest Mountain. Without a doubt, Luo Ting was hiding here. Qin Wushuang was not unfamiliar with the Crest Mountain. It could even be said that he was very familiar with it. When he first cultivated here, he met with Mu Rongqianji here. Even the many things that happened later were all in the Crest Mountain. Therefore, it could be said that Qin Wushuang was more familiar with the Crest Mountain than Luo Ting. Because of this reason, Qin Wushuang was also very experienced in searching. He was also very focused. At once, he searched everywhere. He summoned all 3 spiritual beasts and assigned them how to search and how to pull the net. Qin Wushuang knew that even if he had to use a carpet search, he must find Luo Ting. If Luo Ting did not die, the disaster would not end. After searching for a quarter of an hour, there was no harvest for the time being. Qin Wushuang said to Precious Pig, "Precious Pig, use your loud voice. Use your strongest roar and the most irregular notes to create the most unpleasant and unbearable noise." Pure Altar Precious Pig was stunned. "Master, although Old Pig is very good at it, what is this for? This Luo Ting must be hiding in the dark to recover his energy. Although we can't find him for the time being, we can't let him relax. You use the noise to disturb his primordial spirit and make him restless and unable to focus wholeheartedly. In this way, his recovery speed will definitely be much slower." Pure Altar Precious Pig was enlightened and nodded with a smile. "This is easy." After saying that, he raised his voice and started to roar loudly. All kinds of strange sounds, like that of broken copper and iron, sounded especially irritating. Even when hissing Sky Phoenix and one-horn mystical horse heard Pure Altar Precious Pig's broken gong-like voice, they felt a wave of unbearable pain. At this moment, Luo Ting was hiding in the dense stone forest. He was wholeheartedly focused on cultivation, seizing every minute and second to recover his primordial spirit. Just when he was feeling at ease, he suddenly heard this broken gong-like voice that shook the sky. Hearing this, he felt a wave of irritation and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Just as he was trying his best to forget the existence of this noise, that Pure Altar Precious Pig's noise had a very penetrating power. It was as if every note was like a little mouse, drilling into Luo Ting's consciousness, disturbing his nerves, disturbing his thoughts, causing him to be unable to be distracted no matter what. If Luo Ting did not overexert himself at this time, he would definitely not be unable to withstand the test. But at this moment, he was already an arrow at the end of its flight. In addition to this kind of disturbance, it was naturally very uncomfortable. It was as if countless ants were constantly crawling in his heart and liver. It was also as if a small knife was constantly cutting his heart and liver. It was indescribably uncomfortable. When it rains, it pours. Just when Luo Ting was feeling a wave of annoyance, Qin Wushuang's voice sounded again. "Luo Ting, where did your heroic spirit go? I know you are hiding in this crest mountain. But you may not know that I am much more familiar with this crest mountain than you are." When Luo Ting heard this from afar, his lungs were about to explode from anger. Only then did he remember that Qin Wushuang seemed to have really stayed in this crest mountain before. In a panic, he miscalculated again. But Luo Ting did not panic. Crest Mountain stretched for thousands of miles. Even if you were familiar with it, could you be familiar with every corner? But Luo Ting did not believe in heresy. Glancing at the wild flame cliff where the red light was constantly rushing up, Luo Ting suddenly remembered that he had a top-grade spirit talisman on him. It could guarantee that he could pass through the fire as if it was flat ground. That wild flame cliff was filled with flames all day long. At this juncture, if he really had nowhere to go, he could just escape to the bottom of the wild flame cliff. The path to life had to be found in the path of death. Thinking of this, Luo Ting's heart was filled with confidence. P.S. Old Bull does not have any activities today. There will be 4 more chapters. Brothers, please send me some monthly votes as soon as possible. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 513. This idea that flashed through Luo Ting's mind made him feel more confident. Qin Wushuang, even if you use 3 abnormal profound void martial stage spirit beasts to suppress one of mine, so what? If you let me leave calmly today, then you just have to wait for my endless revenge. Luo Ting thought fiercely. These days, he was really too aggrieved. Being chased by this Qin Wushuang, he had lost all of his face. To the proud and arrogant Luo Ting, this kind of gloominess was simply more unbearable than being beheaded. Luo Ting leaned against the stone forest and slowly moved towards the direction of the wild flame cliff step by step. He was afraid that he would make even the slightest movement and be discovered by Qin Wushuang and the others. Fortunately, this stone forest was really lush, and the surrounding of the stone forest was also surrounded by large trees with luxuriant foliage. Therefore, Luo Ting's movement had a very favorable cover. Qin Wushuang also spread out his wings and circled in the sky. Luo Ting looked into the sky through the gap and saw that Qin Wushuang actually had a pair of wings on his back. This kind of situation simply made Luo Ting feel a burst of guilty conscience. What the hell is this? How did he grow a pair of big wings out of nowhere? How did this Qin Wushuang have the same divine ability as the Beast Clan? Only those spirit beasts of the Bird Clan would normally grow a pair of wings on their back. Since ancient times, the situation of humans growing a pair of wings could be said to be extremely rare. After all, Luo Ting was still young, and there were many things that he was not as experienced and knowledgeable as the older generation. Seeing Qin Wushuang's strange appearance, his heart also felt somewhat guilty. In the depths of his heart, he had to admit that no matter how unwilling he was to do this, he had to be sure that he had indeed underestimated Qin Wushuang. Moreover, Qin Wushuang's talent was obviously far beyond his imagination. It should be known that in terms of age, Qin Wushuang was only in his early 20s, and was much younger than Luo Ting. Therefore, in terms of talent, Luo Ting realized that he himself might not be much stronger than Qin Wushuang. At Qin Wushuang's age, Luo Ting's cultivation was not necessarily stronger than Qin Wushuang's. Luo Ting, when you were chasing after me, how heroic and how high-spirited were you? Don't hide. Come out sooner or later, you won't be able to hide. Today, this crest mountain will be your burial ground. Qin Wushuang continued to exert pressure on Luo Ting. Every word he said had a deterrent force, making Luo Ting unable to suppress his nervousness. Qin Wushuang flew in the air for a while and continued to fly towards the stone forest. He called out to the three spiritual beasts, "This Luo Ting must be in the vicinity of this stone forest. The three of you split into three directions and form an encirclement. I'll provide support from above." This kind of inch-by-inch search made Luo Ting even more invisible. Luo Ting was shocked. He knew that if he continued to endure like this, he would at most be able to delay for a little longer. He had to make a change. When he was passive, he had to try his best to grasp the initiative. When Luo Ting thought of this, he held the chain knife in his hand and activated a spiritual talisman. His body turned into a ray of light and quickly rushed out of the stone forest, dashing towards the direction of the wild flame cliff. Naturally, this kind of situation was noticed at the first moment. "Pure altar precious pig roared, 'Block him! Where are you going?' One-horn mystical horse also dashed and chased after him. With the graceful spiritual bow in his hand, Qin Wushuang also dove down. Luo Ting's speed was very fast and his goal was very clear. He rushed to the side of the wild flame cliff in an instant. He sneered and looked at Qin Wushuang with an incomparably arrogant expression. "Qin Wushuang, do you think that today, for sure, I am at the end of my rope? Is that so?" Luo Ting sneered and his tone was filled with a mocking tone. Qin Wushuang flew in the air, and maintained the graceful spiritual bow to attack at any time. He sneered and said to Luo Ting, "Then do you think that you still have a way to escape?" Luo Ting sneered and replied sarcastically, "Qin Wushuang, have you ever thought about the consequences that you would face if you failed to take the risk to kill me? I don't even need to think about the consequences. Today, you will definitely die." Qin Wushuang's voice was cold. The graceful spiritual bow had already started to aim and enveloped Luo Ting's body within the shooting range. Luo Ting gazed at Qin Wushuang with a layer of frost covering his face. He said indignantly, "Qin Wushuang, I admit that you have some luck. But today, all your luck has come to an end. You have so many good cards. Since you can't kill me at the last moment, this is your last chance. Next, you just have to wait for me, Luo Tian, to arrive and take my endless revenge. After Luo Ting finished speaking, he unexpectedly fell head first down the wild flame cliff. This spirit of sacrificing oneself to jump off the cliff made Qin Wushuang and the three spirit beasts shocked. They never thought that Luo Ting would choose to jump off the cliff on his own accord and not make a deathbed struggle. As he fell head first, Qin Wushuang immediately reacted and shouted, "Not good, I'm afraid that this brat has a trick up his sleeve." After he finished speaking, Qin Wushuang also dived down. Following the direction of Luo Ting's fall, he spread out his wings and ferociously drilled downwards. With a bow and arrow in one hand and the Overlord breaking formation spear in the other, he swept away all of the red mist. He saw that Luo Ting's figure was already like a black dot that quickly fell forward. This Luo Ting actually ignored this absolute high temperature. This made Qin Wushuang feel apprehensive in his heart. Immediately, he understood that Luo Ting most likely had some kind of heaven-defying equipment on his body that had extremely high endurance against fire. Without thinking, he shouted, "Luo Ting, even if you escape to the 9 Serenities Hell today, I will chase you to the 9 Serenities Hell. I'm going to take your life today." At this moment, suddenly, the airflow from below surged up at a high speed. He only heard Luo Ting's miserable cry as if he had encountered some unexpected situation. Inwardly, Qi Wushuang was overjoyed when he heard this. Just when he wanted to know what had happened, suddenly, a scolding voice shouted from below, "Darn it, how come something fell down all of a sudden?" Yet another voice said, "Second, did you hear a sound from above?" "Sound, what sound?" "Only the sound of the boiling magma came from below. I did not hear any other sound." "What is that?" "It seems to be Boss's voice." "No way. How could it be Boss? Boss fell into this giant magma lake?" Indeed, the one who spoke was the purple flame electric beast. "Look, that person is not dead." Of course, the other voice was Bao Bao. He looked at that giant magma lake with astonishment. A voice was crawling with great effort in the thick magma. Of course, this person was Luo Ting. Initially, Luo Ting had rushed down unconsciously. Since he had consumed too much spiritual qi in the previous few days, he could not purify his spiritual qi under this high-temperature environment. Thus, when he was about to reach the bottom, he lost his footing and fell down. Although he was about to hit the ground, the momentum of the loss of his footing was not strong. However, the place where he had fallen was unlucky, as he had fallen into that boiling magma lake. Although Luo Ting was powerful, when he fell into this boiling magma, although he had the protection of the spiritual talisman to prevent the high temperature from invading him, the powerful pulling force of the magma made Luo Ting, who was an arrow at the end of its flight, feel extremely strenuous. Each step he swam felt extremely difficult. Luo Ting struggled a little and his soul scattered. He knew that unless he recovered his strength, he would not be able to walk out of this giant magma lake. However, the time of use of that spiritual talisman was limited. It was not the kind of spiritual talisman that could not be used up in the long run. Furthermore, under such an environment, it was impossible for Luo Ting to have sufficient time to recover his strength. Frightened out of his wits, Luo Ting looked around. When he saw Bao Bao and the purple flame electric beast, he immediately called out, "Hey, you two, are you the indigenous spiritual beasts here? Please help me, I am Luo Ting from Luo Tian. If you guys can think of a way to drag me out of this giant magma lake, I will definitely thank you heavily. I believe that with my rich strength, certainly." "You are Luo Ting? That Luo Ting from Luo Tian?" Bao Bao and Lone felt incredibly incredulous. Luo Ting thought that the other party had heard of his name. Instantly, he nodded and said, "That's me. You two, please help me. Quickly." An extremely strange smile emerged on Bao Bao and Lone's face. They clapped their hands continuously and laughed while holding their stomach. They looked at Luo Ting with eyes full of schadenfreude. They even looked at him as if he was their prey. Luo Ting's scalp felt numb and his eyeballs almost popped out of their socket. He said stutteringly, "You guys! What do you guys plan to do?" "What do we plan to do?" The purple flame electric beast laughed eerily. "You humans have a saying? You can wear out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort. Bao Bao, right?" Bao Bao was also overjoyed. "Yes, ha ha, Luo Ting." At this moment, suddenly, a voice came down from above against this rushing airflow. "Luo Ting, I know you are not dead. However, how far do you think you can go?" Suppressed by this wave of airflow, Qin Wushuang could not rush down and kept shouting from above. However, his voice came down from the opposite direction of this rising airflow. Thus, his voice could not be heard clearly. Bao Bao and Lone were overjoyed as they cried out, "Boss, boss, is that you? We are Bao Bao and Lone." The voice from below followed the airflow and reached Qin Wushuang's ears. Although the noise was loud, he could hear it more clearly. "Bao Bao, Lone?" Qin Wushuang was overjoyed at this turn of events. "You guys are not dead?" He used almost all of his power to send his voice down against the airflow. When Bao Bao and Lone heard Qin Wushuang's voice, they were sure that it was Qin Wushuang. They were even more overjoyed. "Boss, it's us. Boss, you are indeed safe and sound. Ha ha, the heavens did not destroy us three brothers." Bao Bao and Lone hugged each other and jumped next to the giant magma lake excitedly. At the same time, they shouted, "Boss, is it you who chased after Luo Ting?" Qin Wushuang was stunned. Could it be that Luo Ting is down there? "Ha ha, boss, this is called the heavens have eyes. This Luo Ting fell into a giant magma lake and is now taking a magma bath, ha ha. Boss, are you going to come down and take a look?" Qin Wushuang worked hard to rush through this wave of airflow as he said, "Bao Bao, Lone, watch that guy. I will go down when the eruption period of this wave of airflow is over." When Luo Ting heard the main battle between the two sides, he was both shocked and furious. He almost fainted on the spot. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 514. When Luo Ting heard this exchange, he directly spat out a mouthful of blood. He had to admit that his luck was extremely bad. At the bottom of the wild flame cliff, where no one had come in 1,000 years, there were two spiritual beasts that called Qin Wushuang brothers. Everything seemed to be a chess piece arranged by Qin Wushuang, waiting for him to come to his door. And this giant lava lake seemed to be a trap set by Qin Wushuang, waiting for him to jump in. Regardless of how flustered and exasperated Luo Ting was, the more he struggled in this giant lava lake, the more he sank. In a moment, that lava had wrapped around his entire body below his waist. Luo Ting took a deep breath and clasped the chain blade lightly. Then, he observed the terrain around him. As long as there was a little place he could borrow, he had the confidence to use the length of the chain blade to pull himself out of the lava. Although he might not be able to escape from this valley, it would be better than dying before his sworn enemy. That kind of helpless struggle would certainly make his enemy feel great. Thus, Luo Ting would never give up. Since the airflow was still rising, Qin Wushuang would not be able to rush down for now. He must think of a way to struggle out. Clearly, these two spiritual beasts were much weaker than those three monstrous spiritual beasts. In a short sprint, Luo Ting had the confidence to shake them off. Instantly, he looked around and locked his gaze on a giant tree on the southern shore. When he stopped looking at that giant tree, suddenly, Bao Bao laughed. "Lone, that giant tree looks annoying. How could a tree grow in this fiery valley? It looks irksome, go pull it up by the roots to prevent it from being annoying." How could the purple flame electric beast not know Luo Ting's thought? He knew that Bao Bao was deliberately teasing Luo Ting. Thus, he twisted his body and shot to the side of that giant tree. He pulled with both arms and with a fierce cry, he pulled this giant tree up by the root. He threw it into the distance. Instantly, this throw had far exceeded the range of Luo Ting's chain blade. The purple flame electric beast patrolled around, and in a spurt of energy, he continued to pull up all the giant trees he could borrow. This pull could be said to have completely destroyed Luo Ting's life force. Naturally, Luo Ting would not sit and wait for his death. With a wave of his arm, the chain knife was like a whirlwind as it rapidly flew towards the last big tree in the north. Bao Bao had been staring at Luo Ting for a while. When he saw Luo Ting raise his arm, he knew his next move. He swung his arms and smashed the giant stick over. Halfway through, he blocked Luo Ting's chain blade. With this swing, sparks flew in all directions. Bao Bao's body was extremely agile. With a roll in the air, he smashed towards Luo Ting's head. Everything below Luo Ting's waist was completely covered by the magma. Thus, it was extremely difficult for him to move, and his combat power was almost half of his usual. Plus, he was holding on bitterly and was on the verge of collapsing his spiritual qi. Thus, when he was attacked by a fresh force like Bao Bao, instantly, he felt powerless. Smelly monkey! Luo Ting gritted his teeth. Get out of my way! From the corner of his eyes, Bao Bao saw that the purple flame electric beast had already pulled out that last giant tree. He chuckled. Go away then, stay here and take root. Ha! After he had finished, he somersaulted a dozen times in the air and dropped to the shore. Boss, the airflow has weakened, it's about time to come down. You must be careful, don't be like Luo Ting and fall into the giant magma lake. Bao Bao observed this airflow and said again, also, the temperature down here is extremely high. If you can't take it, don't force yourself to come down. Bao Bao and Lone had stayed at the bottom of this valley for many days. Besides training, they observed the changes of this airflow. Gradually, they had grasped the pattern of this airflow. They knew when it would rise and when it would calm down. However, the surrounding red mist and the high temperature would not dissipate no matter what. If it were the Qin Wushuang of the past, it would be unknown whether or not he could withstand such high temperature. However, the current Qin Wushuang had that azure blue armor. His resistance to high temperature could be said to be much more advanced than Luo Ting's spiritual talisman. Of course, he would be able to withstand this high temperature. Indeed, as Bao Bao had said, the airflow had slowly calmed down. When Qin Wushuang saw that the airflow had weakened by about half, he dashed down with all his strength. As far as the eye could see, there was indeed a sea of boiling magma that was emitting scorching heat. It was like a pot of thick porridge, giving people a very strong feeling of impact in their hearts. Boss! Bao Bao and Lone were overjoyed as they cheered. Qin Wushuang dropped to the shore and was also extremely excited. Great, Bao Bao, Lone, you guys are indeed here. I knew that nothing would happen to you guys. Boss, you are also fine, haha. Thank God. Bao Bao was overjoyed. Lone pointed to that Luo Ting and asked, Boss, how did you meet this guy, and how did you end up in such an embarrassing state after being chased by you? Instantly, Qin Wushuang made the long story short and told him everything that had happened after they had parted. Besides the part about the Ghost King Mountain that he did not speak about, he spoke about the other important parts. Bao Bao and Lone sighed endlessly as they learned that Qin Wushuang had come to this wild flame cliff to find them a few times. He had almost flown to the bottom of the valley and was blocked by that airflow. Boss, that air current is erupting for at least 11 hours out of the 24 hours a day. The period of calmness is short. Thus, it would be difficult for the people above to come down. Unless you are lucky and that airflow is not strong. This guy fell head first, and it seems that he went against the flow of that airflow. No wonder he fell head first, haha. Looking at Luo Ting, who was struggling in the giant magma lake, Qin Wushuang passed through Bao Bao and Lone to walk to the shore. He stared at Luo Ting and mocked him without holding back. Luo Ting, how do you feel? Inwardly, Luo Ting was filled with endless sorrow. He had exhausted all his means and sorted out all his trump cards. In the end, he still discovered that the trump cards he possessed could not help him escape from this crisis. When he thought here, naturally, Luo Ting felt some fear inwardly. However, before Qin Wushuang, this Luo Ting still remained strong. He did not wish to let Qin Wushuang admire his current state. Luo Ting's inner defense line had almost collapsed as he still cried out, "Qin Wushuang, you would not dare to kill me!" Qin Wushuang smacked his tongue and laughed. "Luo Ting, under your situation, I cannot understand where your confidence comes from. Blind confidence is called arrogance. Do you know what arrogance means?" Luo Ting said angrily, "Don't pick words with me. Qin Wushuang, I am officially warning you. You have acted recklessly and chased after me. For this matter, the head Tao warrior of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect already knows. If you kill me, you know the consequences. The head Tao warrior is not me. Once he gets angry, he can raze the human countries to the ground at any time. You, a mere disciple of the human countries, can you bear the torrential anger of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect?" Luo Ting felt that as long as this Qin Wushuang had not lost his mind, he should know that in the end, he could not afford to offend the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Only by making Qin Wushuang restrain his fear, Luo Ting could find a thread of survival. However, his persuasion ability was clearly limited. After he had finished speaking, not only did Qin Wushuang not show any sign of repentance, he added fuel to the fire. "Is the heavenly Luo Daoist sect the master of the heavenly Emperor Mountain? Is it the totem powerhouse? Luo Ting, if you think that by mentioning the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, I must say that you are very naive." Luo Ting's expression changed dramatically. "Qin Wushuang, you are willful and not afraid of death. Could it be that you would abandon your family, your fellow disciples? If you kill me, the heavenly Luo Daoist sect will lose a disciple. And you, Qin Wushuang, will lose everything, including yourself, your family, and all your friends. Anyone who knows you, Qin Wushuang, will be buried with me." Lone said angrily, "Boss, don't listen to this kid's nonsense. How about I end his little life, so that the heavenly Luo Daoist sect won't chase after him?" Luo Ting cried out miserably, "It's useless. If any of your shrimp soldiers and crab generals make a move, this debt will be on your head. Besides, even if someone else were to kill me, in the end, it will be you who will take the blame. It's because I have already contacted the head Tao warrior. He knows that you are chasing after me with 3 spiritual beasts at the profound void martial stage." Qin Wushuang kept sneering coldly and did not speak a word. He only stared at this Luo Ting and apparently, he was also trying to discern the truth of his words. When Luo Ting saw Qin Wushuang acting like this, he felt secretly joyful. With a flash of his hand, he took that communication jade plate. "This is the jade plate I used to communicate with the head Tao warrior. How about I try to communicate with him again?" Luo Ting knew that in the current situation, he must prove that he had contacted the head Tao warrior as soon as possible. Or else, without the slightest restraining fear, Qin Wushuang would certainly reap his life without mercy in the next moment. With the layer of concern from the head Tao warrior, more or less, this Qin Wushuang would consider more before making a move. Holding back from shooting at the rat for fear of breaking the vases, it would not be easy to kill Luo Ting. Unless this Qin Wushuang had lost his mind and did not even want his family and friends. From Luo Ting's understanding of Qin Wushuang, this Qin Wushuang would not ignore his family and friends. Luo Ting, who thought that he had succeeded in his scheme, felt that he had grasped Qin Wushuang's weakness. He initiated his spiritual perception and once again, a tremendous change appeared on the jade plate in Luo Ting's hand. A cold voice emerged from inside. "Luo Ting, where are you? I have already sent out a few advanced elders, and the 3rd Tao warrior has also stepped out. You have to hold on, do you understand?" The voice of the head Tao warrior, Luo Tongtian, was dignified and cold as he said. Luo Ting did not know whether to laugh or cry. Head Dao warrior, I can't hold on anymore. I have now fallen below the wild flame cliff of the crest mountain of the Judge Mountain. Below my waist, I am surrounded by magma. Head Dao warrior, can you urge those reinforcements to come quickly? As Luo Ting spoke till here, he proudly waved the jade plate in his hand towards Qin Wushuang. How far is Qin Wushuang from you? Hearing that Luo Ting's situation was not good, Head Dao warrior was very concerned. Head Dao warrior, they are already right under my nose. Luo Ting's tone was low, full of frustration and defeat. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 515. Even an elite senior like the Head Dao warrior was stunned when he heard Luo Ting's words. However, he reacted quickly and said with an even colder tone, "Did you not tell him the consequences of killing you and offending the heavenly Luo Daoist sect?" Head Dao warrior, I already told them clearly. Under the imposing manner of the Head Dao warrior, Luo Ting was somewhat trembling with fear. Of course, under such circumstances, he did not have much confidence. He did not know whether Qin Wushuang would compromise or not. On the side of the Head Dao warrior, he initiated his spiritual perception and increased the power of his voice. He rushed out of the jade plate and resounded through the entire mountain valley. Kid of the human countries, listen up. The tone of the Head Dao warrior Luo Tongtian was deep, and within this deep tone, there was a tyrannical sense of authority. I don't care how much you have recovered, or how many fortuitous opportunities you have. If you kill Luo Ting today, it means you are becoming the enemy of the entire heavenly Luo Daoist sect. For such a price, I can tell you with certainty that you cannot bear it. The warning of the Head Dao warrior was filled with dignity. Relying on the imposing manner of the Head Dao warrior, Luo Ting had instantly gained much confidence. He raised his head and stared at Qin Wushuang. He watched each of Qin Wushuang's movements and even each of his eyes and movements. Qin Wushuang was expressionless. Suddenly, Qin Wushuang laughed and asked leisurely, "So only the heavenly Luo Daoist sect is allowed to bully me and chase after me, Qin Wushuang. It's natural for you guys to chase after me. You used despicable methods to deal with my friends and family in the human countries, and you were even more justified. And when I fought back, you guys said I was becoming the enemy of the entire heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Okay, it's the same result if I didn't fight back. It's also the same result if I fought back. If it were you guys, what would you choose?" Qin Wushuang's tone was strangely calm. He did not have the slightest intention of gnashing his teeth. Through his spiritual perception, Luo Ting passed Qin Wushuang's words to him. That Head Dao warrior gave a cold sneer. "From your words, you are planning to bargain? Okay, then I will give you a chance. Today, if you let Luo Ting leave, I can guarantee that I will not go to the human countries to harass your relatives and friends. The matter between you and the heavenly Luo Daoist sect can be resolved between you and Luo Ting. No one else was allowed to interfere. What do you think?" Qin Wushuang said indifferently, "Then the situation will be the same as today. Now, isn't it between me and Luo Ting? Head Dao warrior, since you said so, why are you interfering?" The Head Dao warrior knew that Qin Wushuang was deliberately playing dumb with him, but he said angrily, "Of course, I'm talking about after this." Qin Wushuang said with a cold smile, "After this time? In the end, you still want me to spare Luo Ting's worthless life. Is that what you mean?" Luo Ting's face turned green and white. Since Qin Wushuang had called him worthless before the Head Dao warrior, even if he were to return alive, his position in the heavenly Luo Daoist sect would drop drastically. However, no matter how proud Luo Ting was, he couldn't care less now. His only desire was to escape for his life. As long as he survived today's calamity, Luo Ting had the confidence to get back at him and make Qin Wushuang pay more than 10 times the price. Now, it would depend on whether the head Dao warrior could intimidate that Qin Wushuang. The head Dao warrior said coldly, "Young man, to flaunt your sharp tongue or to flaunt your happiness, it's definitely not the action of a smart person. It seems that the truth is far away from you. But if you calmed down and thought about it, all the possible consequences would come crashing down on you like a flood. I promise that once the wave of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect surges over, it will not be something you can endure." Qin Wushuang laughed out of extreme anger. It was not the first time he had heard such senseless threats. Ever since he had stepped onto the path of martial arts, more than 10 people had said these words. Only, with Qin Wushuang's lofty and unyielding character, when had he ever compromised? For such threats, the more ridiculous they were, the more anger Qin Wushuang felt stifled inside his heart. Clearly, Qin Wushuang was the one who held the upper hand. However, the tone of the other party was clearly speaking with a condescending and overbearing tone. They did not even have the basic courtesy to negotiate. The most repulsive thing was their bandit logic. They had appeared to be right and proper when they were chasing after Qin Wushuang. And when they spoke about how he dealt with Luo Ting, it seemed as if he had violated the heavenly law. In the end, this imbalance was determined by strength. Perhaps, in the eyes of the Dao warrior of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, it was already a great favor to condescend to talk to Qin Wushuang. Perhaps, in his eyes, Qin Wushuang was only a mole cricket and ant. However, even if he was a mole cricket and ant in their eyes, Qin Wushuang still had his own belief. For this belief, he would never yield because of authority, nor would he compromise because of threat. He would not change without reason. He would give them a taste of their own medicine. All of this was due to a simple cause and effect. Therefore, the fact that Luo Ting had fallen to his current state was the result. Even if Qin Wushuang were to be struck by lightning in the next moment, he would not let go of the opportunity to kill Luo Ting. It was because the despicable actions of this Luo Ting had deeply touched his reverse scale. Kill. The sharp light in Qin Wushuang's eyes kept flashing. Suddenly, with a flash of light, he had already pulled out the hegemon breaking formation spear and pointed it at Luo Ting from afar. He said lightly, "Luo Ting, indeed, your heavenly Luo Daoist sect is of the same origin. This so-called head Dao venerate, in my opinion, is exactly the same as you. Remember, I, Qin Wushuang, have a proud and unyielding character. Even if you are a god descending from the heavens, you will not change my decision. You, Luo Ting, should have died long ago. Even if I kill you 10 times, it would not be enough to vent the anger in my heart, and it would not be enough to let those innocent freelance martial artists die in peace." Luo Ting's pupils contracted rapidly as he shouted, "Qin Wushuang, you will regret this." "Regret? Even if that day were to come, I will never let you see it. Besides, as a real man, since I have made the decision, I will not regret it." After he had finished speaking, Qin Wushuang opened his wings again and extended the hegemon breaking formation spear. He dashed towards Luo Ting. Luo Ting yelled and screamed. Apparently, he was making his final struggle. This yelling and screaming had directly interfered with the spiritual perception of the head Dao warrior. Suddenly, that head Dao warrior's Dao heart seemed to have been pierced by a sharp knife. He knew that his aura was still not enough to suppress that Qin Wushuang. And Luo Ting's performance at the most crucial moment had also made him, the head Dao warrior, feel a deep sense of despair. That spiritual perception jade plate had transmitted each of Luo Ting's final struggles, each of his movements, each of his inner thoughts, and even each of his disgraceful actions had all fallen into the head Dao warrior's spiritual perception. The head Dao warrior opened his mouth and with an "ah" sound, he spat out a mouthful of blood. This was not an internal injury, but fresh blood from his life. Along with Luo Ting's last scream, which was hysterical and heartbreaking, This head Dao warrior could no longer suppress his rage. He punched the bed and shouted, "Someone come!" 2 boys that served him walked over and stood next to Luo Tongtian with a face full of fear. "Head Dao warrior, please give your orders." Luo Tongtian roared, "Summon all higher-ups and core disciples of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect to gather at the connecting heaven building. Hurry!" After the 3 drumming sessions were over, all of the cultivators who were in the vicinity didn't dare to be negligent. They knew that the great Tao Paragon had personally summoned them, and didn't dare to linger. They quickly gathered in Heavenspan Pavilion. Everyone saw Luo Tongtian, the head Tao warrior, standing in front of them. A totem that belonged to the heavenly Luo Taoist sect was drawn on a thick and wide wall. That giant wall was like a chessboard as it crisscrossed with each other. It gave people a sense of deep meaning. Luo Tongtian slowly turned around and glanced across the entire scene with a cold gaze. "Is everyone here?" Besides a few higher-ups that had gone out to provide assistance, everyone is here. Of course, young Master Luoting is absent. One of the elders that was in charge of counting the number of people said. Luoting. Luo Tongtian felt as if a knife was twisting in his heart. Once again, Luo Ting's struggles before his death overflowed his spiritual perception. Luo Tongtian's gloomy expression secretly conveyed some kind of gloomy mood. Like a plague, it slowly spread out in the dark. Luo Ting, he will never be able to attend. Luo Tongtian's tone was incredibly gloomy and filled with sorrow and pain. This was the young man that he had spent all his efforts to nurture to become his successor. He had spent an unknown amount of effort, manpower, and resources on him. However, this Luo Ting had lost his life in this sudden incident that had happened without any warning signs. Although it was Luo Ting who had died, the entire heavenly Luo Taoist sect had been denied. Their vision in selecting a successor, as well as the strategy and methods to nurture the successor, had all been denied. Instantly, the words of the head Tao warrior had caused the entire scene to become solemn. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Luo Ting would never be able to attend? What did these words mean? Could it be that Luo Ting? Impossible! How could Luo Ting have died? Unconsciously, many people had already viewed Luo Ting as the future successor of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. They could not accept the news of Luo Ting's sudden death. A wave of questioning and lamentation filled the hall. Luo Tongtian said with a cold voice, "Listen well. The enemy is Qin Wushuang from the human countries. This name has not made the heavenly Luo Taoist sect unhappy for the first time. I don't care what methods you use in the end, I want this Qin Wushuang to suffer a fate worse than death. Before all his family and friends have died, I do not wish for him to die this easily. Remember, I want him to watch helplessly as his friends die one by one in front of his eyes. Furthermore, they will die painfully." When Luo Tongtian finished speaking, he was almost gnashing his teeth in anger. No words could describe his anger and hatred at this moment. He only wished to use all means to torture Qin Wushuang. Even for the higher-ups of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, each of them felt a lingering fear when they heard Luo Tongtian's cold tone. Inwardly, they were in a perilous situation. Apparently, they could not calm down from Luo Ting's death. After they had agreed, these higher-ups all retreated. When they saw the face of the head Tao warrior, no one dared to stay at the scene and offend him. If someone were to make the head Tao warrior feel unhappy, they would be throwing their own lives away. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 516. Of course, Luo Ting's final struggle did not bring much trouble to Qin Wushuang. The instant when the hegemon breaking formation spear pierced into Luo Ting's throat, besides the fear of death, Luo Ting's expression was filled with disbelief. Bao Bao pulled Luo Ting's chain blade and pulled him out of the magma. Boss, since this Luo Ting is the most prized disciple of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, he must have a lot of good things. Let me search. Indeed, Luo Ting had a lot of good things. Besides those one-time use spiritual talismans, regardless of his weapons or armor, they were all first-rate goods. Besides this, he also seized some spiritual talismans that he did not have the time to use. What made Qin Wushuang feel even more of a timely help was that this Luo Ting had an abundance of crystal stones. It made Qin Wushuang's crystal stone storage even more abundant. Boss, what should we do with the body? After they had finished searching, Bao Bao glanced at Luo Ting's body and asked with a smile. After he had killed Luo Ting, Qin Wushuang's mood had become slightly more relaxed. He looked at Luo Ting's body and said lightly, "Throw it into this giant magma lake." Bao Bao kicked that Luo Ting down and turned to say to Qin Wushuang, "Boss, it seems that after we got separated, you had another fortuitous opportunity?" Qin Wushuang did not hide it and told them about that formation. When Bao Bao and Lone heard the story, they felt both miraculous and somewhat regretful that they could not participate in such a momentous moment. When they mentioned how Luo Ting had used a treacherous scheme to frame Qin Wushuang and trick those freelance martial artists to go to the human countries, Bao Bao and Lone still swore and despised Luo Ting's character to the extreme. "Boss, that whatever head Dao warrior is furious, we must be prepared." Naturally, Qin Wushuang had heard the furious tone of that head Dao warrior of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. However, since Qin Wushuang had decided to kill Luo Ting, of course he would not give up the idea of revenge because of a threat from 1,000,000 miles away. In fact, from the first moment when the heavenly Luo Taoist sect had pursued him, Qin Wushuang knew that he would not let this matter go. The final outcome would definitely be a fight to the death. If Qin Wushuang was soft-hearted or retreated, there would be no other result other than letting him die a little faster. Qin Wushuang was absolutely unwilling to sit and wait to be beaten, so he made the first move. Especially this Luo Ting, Qin Wushuang loathed him to the extreme. Bao Bao, even if Boss did not kill this Luo Ting, would the heavenly Luo Taoist sect let it go? Lone was rather straightforward. That would be impossible. The heavenly Luo Taoist sect would do anything to deal with Boss. There's no need to be courteous. Even if we can't beat them, we have to kill a few of them first. Qin Wushuang said coldly, "Revenge, only the heavenly Luo Taoist sect can take revenge on us? Can't we take the initiative to deal with them?" Both Bao Bao and Lone were ferocious spiritual beasts. Hearing Qin Wushuang's words, their blood surged as they immediately asked, "How do you plan to take revenge? Boss, do you have any good ideas?" After a moment of thinking, Qin Wushuang said to Bao Bao and Lone, "Let's go up and talk." Both Bao Bao and Lone were overjoyed. This time, when they were training at the bottom of the valley, their strength had increased rapidly. Both of them had broken through the refined void martial stage and entered the transformation void martial stage. At the transformation void martial stage, one could fly in the air. Since Bao Bao and Lone had mastered the flying technique, they had planned to explore the structure of the valley and try to rush up the wild flame cliff. Unexpectedly, by coincidence, they had encountered Qin Wushuang chasing after Luo Ting. Under the lead of Qin Wushuang, under the support of the airflow, the three brothers flew to the top of the cliff with ease. Soon, they had dropped to the top of the cliff. Those three spiritual beasts at the profound void martial stage were guarding the wild flame cliff. They had also tried to rush down, only to discover that the high temperature was unbearable. Since they were not familiar with the terrain, they could only wait at the top of the wild flame cliff. When they saw Qin Wushuang had returned successfully with two friends, they were overjoyed. Qin Wushuang introduced each other to each other. Since they were all spiritual beasts, they became familiar with each other quickly. Especially Bao Bao, he was extremely excited. "Boss, with the help of these three brothers, it will be much more convenient in the future." Pure Altar Precious Pig snorted. Little monkey, among the 12 sealed scrolls, we also have a brother from the giant monkey clan. However, his strength is much stronger than yours. Bao Bao did not mind as he laughed mischievously. I am still young. You are all old monsters that have lived for a few thousand years. I am not even 10 years old. Not even 10 years old? Hissing Sky Phoenix and that one-horned mystical horse felt somewhat inconceivable. They looked at Bao Bao and felt extremely curious. These spiritual beasts had exceptional eyesight. They could see that the purple flame electric beast should be a few thousand years old spiritual beast. And for Bao Bao they could not see through his age. When they heard Bao Bao claiming to be less than 10 years old, they were extremely surprised. Qin Wushuang said with a smile, Indeed, Bao Bao is not even 10 years old. A wave of uproar emerged. Although these spiritual beasts were sealed thousands or even tens of thousands of years ago, they were extremely impressed when they heard that Bao Bao had such strength before the age of 10. Ha ha, this way, it seems that brother of ours from the giant monkey clan also feels inferior before you. The fat on the entire body of pure altar precious pig trembled. The sealed spiritual beasts inside these sealed scrolls were different than the purple flame electric beast. When they were sealed, even their vital energy and primordial spirit were sealed. In other words, they did not possess the ability to level up again, unless the seal on their primordial spirit was broken. As for the purple flame electric beast, although he was also sealed, he could still advance and continue to cultivate. This was the difference between them. 10 years old and you have reached the transformation void martial stage. Little monkey, nice job. Hissing Sky Phoenix also praised him. Qin Wushuang said, This is not strange, Bao Bao has the bloodline of the ancient spiritual monkey. In fact, he should be a descendant of the divine clan. It's not strange to have such talent. Ancient spiritual monkey? This time, those 3 spiritual beasts at the profound void martial stage were all stunned. They looked at Bao Bao with a few extra traces of envy. The bloodline of the spiritual monkey was equivalent to having the bloodline of the divine clan. Not only was he noble, his potential for training was many times stronger than ordinary spiritual beasts. No wonder he could train to the transformation void martial stage at such a young age. He had the bloodline of the spiritual monkey. These spiritual beasts inside the sealed scrolls were extremely envious of Bao Bao, especially when they thought about how Bao Bao had a boundless future and how they could not escape their fate. They felt more or less bitter inwardly. However, their seal immediately stopped them from thinking in this direction. Immediately, Qin Wushuang received such a signal through his spiritual perception. He said with a smile, If everyone works hard, the future will always be bright. Pure Altar Precious Pig gave a long sigh. Master, we are sealed beasts and have no future. We are only masters fighting machines. Qin Wushuang said seriously. That's right, at the current stage, you guys are my contracted spiritual beasts. However, if I continue to increase my strength in the future, when I am able to break the seal for you guys, you will get rid of your fate. These 3 spiritual beasts at the profound void martial stage were overjoyed as they looked at Qin Wushuang with disbelief. Master, you are not trying to make us happy, right? Bao Bao laughed. Of course not, my boss is very kind and will never order you around like slaves. If boss enters the Supreme Tao, I believe he can lift the seal for you and restore your freedom. Isn't that right, Lone? The purple flame electric beast had followed Qin Wushuang for a long time and was familiar with Qin Wushuang. He knew that Qin Wushuang was kind-hearted and treated his contracted spiritual beasts well. He nodded and said, Everyone, in fact, I am also a sealed spiritual beast. Only, my form is slightly different from yours. Just wait, if there is anyone in this world that can restore your freedom, it will be Boss Wushuang. You guys should also be a part of the formation. Me too. And Boss is the inheritor of the formation. He has inherited everything from the original owner of the formation. I believe that in the future, Boss will be the person at the peak of the Tian Xian land. For sure, he will rule the fate of the entire Tian Xian land. The purple flame electric beast was extremely determined as he had survived numerous calamities. It had made him even more convinced that Qin Wushuang was a genius blessed by the heavens. In the unseen world, for sure, he had been blessed by a miraculous fortune. If he did not have such great fortune, how could he have acquired the inheritance of that formation? Bao Bao also said, Lone is right. Regardless of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, the heavenly punishing villa, or the sound of thunder sect, each of them are insurmountable mountains. Sooner or later, they will be trampled under Boss's feet and become his stepping stone to the peak. Bao Bao and Lone spoke one after another in a high-profile manner. Qin Wushuang did not become hot-headed as he said calmly, It's still too early to say 1,000 words or 10,000 words. Since Luo Ting is dead, the revenge of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect will erupt like a volcano. We must be prepared for everything. Ha, boss, what are you afraid of? I don't believe that those Tao warriors will step out themselves. Bao Bao was extremely optimistic. If their Tao warriors step out to deal with you, for sure the heavenly Luo Taoist sect will become the #1 joke of the Xian Yuan Mound. Boss, if you can mobilize all the Tao warriors of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect to deal with you, I believe that the heavenly Emperor Qin clan will not sit by and do nothing. Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, inwardly, Qin Wushuang felt a wave of bitterness. He thought about how Senior Qin Shushuan's body had yet to turn cold and was still waiting for his soul to return to his homeland. For this dying wish, regardless of anything, Qin Wushuang must fulfill it for Senior Qin Shushuan. Everyone listen well, we will return to the Ironwood State City of the Orderly Mountain Prefecture immediately. Jade Hare and Mole are still waiting for us there. After we regroup, we will make plans. This time, Qin Wushuang had achieved complete success when he ambushed those freelance martial artists at the dispersed Praying Mountain. Currently, the news of Luo Ting spreading rumors to frame Qin Wushuang had spread across the entire Xian Yuan Mound. Naturally, after those freelance martial artists learned that they had been tricked, they stopped their footsteps towards the human countries. For some freelance martial artists who were unwilling to give up, after they had suffered at the hands of Moon Palace Jade Hare and Sky Pilfered Mole, they had either died or suffered injuries. This way, when Qin Wushuang and his friends had returned to the Ironwood State City, this place was no longer as lively as before. The 3 freelance martial artists had also retreated from this area. After they had regrouped, Qin Wushuang decided to return to the human countries and take care of all the aftermath. Then, he would return to the Xian Yuan Mound to deal with the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. To be continued. If you want to know about the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 517. Qin Wushuang and his group returned to the dispersed Praying Mountain. Bao Bao returned to the Monkey King Mountain to visit. Both parties agreed to meet again at the Monkey King Mountain. When Qin Wushuang returned to the human countries, this time, Qin Wushuang was even more cautious. He sent his family to the Stargaze Palace. As long as there were any movements, he would immediately enter the Endless Eastern Sea. Without the spiritual key to open the Endless Eastern Sea, even if the head Tao warrior of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect had come, Qin Wushuang would not be worried. It was because even the head Tao warrior of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect could not easily open the defenses of this Endless Eastern Sea. After Qin Wushuang had settled everything, he did not waste any more time. After he met up with Bao Bao at the Monkey King Mountain, they headed towards the direction of the Xian Yuan Mound again. This time, Qin Wushuang and his group had learned their lesson and would not get involved in any disputes along the way. They only left Ying Long to scout the situation at the border between the Xian Yuan Mound and the dispersed Praying Mountain. Once there was an emergency, he would immediately think of a way to inform Qin Wushuang. For this trip, Qin Wushuang only had one goal, and that was the headquarters of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. To get to the headquarters, he must travel through at least a few million miles of territory. To Qin Wushuang, this was a tremendous challenge. However, Qin Wushuang did not hesitate. Qin Shixuan's body had not yet turned cold. At this moment, Qin Wushuang must help Qin Shixuan fulfill his wish. Soon, they passed through the Judge Mountain Prefecture. Along the way, Qin Wushuang kept an unusually low profile. Despite this, he still encountered some troublesome matters. However, Qin Wushuang dealt with them skillfully. Of course, the most important thing along the way was training. After the battle with Luo Ting, Qin Wushuang deeply realized that after all, there was still a huge gap between his strength and a true elite warrior. He must make up for this gap as soon as possible. Thus, besides traveling each day, he trained. After walking for more than half a month, he arrived at a huge place called the Danxia Prefecture. This Danxia Prefecture was different than the Orderly Mountain and the Judge Mountain Prefecture. The territory of the Danxia Prefecture was vast and a few powerful powerhouses occupied it. Among them, there were second-rate powerhouses on par with the scale of the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect. Because of the existence of these powerhouses, it allowed the Danxia Prefecture to hold a good position across the entire Xian Yuan Mound. In the Xian Yuan Mound, he could rank in the top 15. With Bao Bao and Lone, Qin Wushuang was on the main street of the capital city of Danxia Prefecture. Everywhere was bustling with activity. It was even better than the Orderly Mountain Prefecture and the Judge Mountain Prefecture. The purpose of Qin Wushuang's trip was to visit an artisan. In Danxia Prefecture, this craftsman was best at crafting various types of talismans. Qin Wushuang had come here to ask this master craftsman to make a few things. After walking down a few streets, the further down they went, the closer they got to a remote area. Qin Wushuang frowned and said, "The map drawn by Ying Long can't be wrong, right? He must have the guts." Bao Bao laughed. Looking up, this place was already similar to a slum. Passing through all kinds of alleys, it gave one a dirty and messy feeling. It's strange. Could it be that all master craftsmen have strange habits? Could it be that this master Lu Xianlu likes to live in such a remote area? Initially, the talisman crafting master that Qin Wushuang wanted to visit was called Lu Xianlu. In the entire Xian Yuan Mound, he had a high reputation. The talismans he crafted were definitely top-notch. In the Xian Yuan Mound, countless people begged him to craft talismans. However, when crafting talismans, this master Lu Xianlu judged people by their appearance. He did not receive three things. Firstly, he would not receive those he did not find pleasing to the eye. Secondly, he would not receive those who were notorious. Lastly, and the most realistic, he would not receive those who could not afford the commission. The last two were all right. However, no one was confident about the first one. In fact, whether someone was pleasing to the eye or not, it was just a moment of joy, anger, sorrow, and joy. After walking for a while, Bao Bao's sharp eyes caught a glimpse of an inconspicuous signboard in the small alley on the left. A monotonous word, Lu, was written on it. Could it be this place? Bao Bao could not believe his eyes. It's not that this place is not good. Only, this master is too good at enduring loneliness. For someone as popular as him to be willing to endure loneliness in such a place, he is truly different from others. Qin Wushuang did not find it strange. In fact, many of the ancient people from Qin Wushuang's former world also enjoyed living in seclusion and were willing to endure loneliness. Perhaps this master Lu Xianlu was a person that did not seek fame and fortune. Bao Bao, most likely, only a master would have such breadth of mind and stage. If it's someone who could not endure loneliness, how could they become a master? A master does not become one through flattery, but through hard work bit by bit. Although I am an amateur at crafting talismans, for any skill, the most valuable part is the expertise. Bow bow, let's go take a look. Before a true master, we must not neglect. In fact, Qin Wushuang had come this time to craft an extremely practical tool. For this tool, he had been inspired when he saw Luo Ting using it. Luo Ting had used the communication jade plate to communicate with Luo Tongtian, the head Dao warrior of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect from a few million miles away. This proved that the communication jade plate was extremely useful. Qin Wushuang knew that this thing was extremely important. In the human countries, he had never seen such a thing. And the cost of this thing was not something the human countries could afford. While he was thinking, he had already arrived at the entrance of the shop. This shop was not big as it sat next to a small alley built with green stone slabs. A young man dressed as an apprentice was holding a carving knife at the door. He was carving seriously on a stone slab. For each stroke, he was serious and focused. When Qin Wushuang saw that he was engrossed in carving, he did not have the heart to disturb him. He stopped Bao Bao and Lone's boorish behavior and stood quietly on the side to admire the masterpiece of this young man. Although Qin Wushuang did not understand carving, he had a certain level of understanding. In his former world, Qin Wushuang had stolen many famous works that had been handed down from overseas, including various elegant works of art. Thus, although he was not a professional when it came to appreciating works of art, he had some intuition. As soon as he saw the style of the carving, he felt a kind of fascinating realm. Certainly, the work that could make Qin Wushuang feel this way would not be ordinary. Qin Wushuang stood on the side and watched patiently. Clearly, that young man was carving the eyes of the statue. The eyes were the window to the soul. If the eyes were carved with charm, the entire work would become lively and lifelike. It would produce a form of intoxicating charm. That young man frowned and pondered deeply. Apparently, he was hesitating on how to start. Suddenly, he turned around and saw Qin Wushuang staring at him attentively. For a moment, he seemed to have been enlightened as he clapped his hands and laughed. Got it! He picked up the carving knife and started to carve on the surface. After a few simple strokes, a pair of bright and piercing eyes came into being. Bao Bao and Lone were shocked. This gaze. Boss, how come this gaze is so familiar? These two looked at this statue with disbelief. Then, they looked at Qin Wushuang and could not help but cry out, Boss, this is you? This young man had acted according to the situation and caught Qin Wushuang's gaze in that instant. Immediately, his spiritual perception became clear. In a few strokes, he had drawn Qin Wushuang's gaze into this statue. It was vivid and vivid. No wonder Bao Bao and Lone were both astonished. Qin Wushuang also felt it was inconceivable. This style had surpassed his imagination. In this world, there were truly such skilled craftsmen who could create such exquisite craftsmanship. It was so lifelike that even Qin Wushuang himself could not help but feel astonished. When Qin Wushuang looked at the eyes of this statue, he could almost feel a resonance. That's amazing! That's amazing! That's really amazing! Indeed, an elite warrior is among the people. A true elite warrior does not lie in where he lives, but in where he is brilliant. Despite your young age, you have made such great works. Could you be the disciple of Master Lu? Master Lu? That young man showed a face of confusion. Who is that? Qin Wushuang and Bao Bao looked at each other in dismay. The signboard clearly had the word Lu written on it. Why did this young man ask this question? Could it be this young man was not related to the owner of this place? However, if he was not related, why would he carve before Master Lu's door and not treat himself as an outsider? Could it be this is not Master Lu Xianluo's mansion? That young man raised his eyebrow. You guys have found the right person to find Lu Xianlu. There is no such Master Lu here. Yes, yes, we are looking for Lu Xianlu. Young man, is Lu Xianlu your senior? Or is he your teacher or grandmaster? Bao Bao kept asking a series of questions. That young man rolled his eyes. You guys know Lu Xianlu? Of course not, we are here to visit. That young man said. If you guys don't know Lu Xianlu, how do you know if he is fat or thin? Is he old or young? Why do you think I am Lu Xianlu's disciple? Bao Bao chuckled. Then you can't be his ancestor. That young man rolled his eyes again at Bao Bao. I am Lu Xianlu. As soon as he said these words, not to mention Bao Bao and Lone, even Qin Wushuang was dumbstruck. This young man was Lu Xianlu? After being stunned for a moment, Qin Wushuang finally realized the light. So you are Master Lu Xianlu. I thought you were Master Lu Xianlu's disciple and grand disciple. I thought you had surpassed your master. Now it seems that the truly extravagant ones are after all rare. Lu Xianlu chuckled and did not fall for Qin Wushuang's trick. He carried that carving back into the house. Okay, speak, why did you come to find me? Do you know that I don't accept people? Yes, of course I know. Bao Bao answered. You don't accept people you don't like, people with bad reputations, and people you can't afford. Am I right? That's right. Lu Xianlu said lightly. You did not interrupt me when you came here. The first time I saw you, I let you enter my work. Of course, I would not find you unpleasing to my eyes. You guys have passed this test. Okay, next, you must tell me where you are from and what your identity is. Then, you must prove that you can afford to pay my commission. To be continued, if you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. More chapters, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 518. It was somewhat difficult to ask Qin Wushuang to show his identity. Qin Wushuang had always concealed his identity. He did not expect to expose himself here. When Lu Xianlu saw Qin Wushuang smiling without speaking a word, he did not mind. He looked at that statue and suddenly Lu Xianlu said, I only look at people by their eyes. These eyes do not belong to an extremely vicious person. Qin Wushuang let out a sigh of relief and Bao Bao laughed. Mr. Lu, although our boss also killed people, those people he killed deserved to die. Besides, Lu Xianlu waved his hand and stopped Bao Bao's explanation. I only trust my own judgment. Lu Xianlu's tone gave one the impression of being unreasonable. However, Qin Wushuang could not feel any disgust for his personality. It was because Qin Wushuang knew that someone like Lu Xianlu had such personality. He did not have any malicious intentions or a natural inclination to choke people. Speak. What kind of spiritual talisman do you want to make? Lu Xianlu asked. Mr. Lu, I want to make a few spiritual perception talismans from you. Qin Wushuang spoke frankly. He also knew that this Lu Xianlu liked to be straightforward. Lu Xianlu frowned slightly. Just the spiritual perception talisman? Although the spiritual perception talisman was of high quality, it was not difficult to make as long as one had the raw materials. Most of the people who came here to request to make spiritual talismans wanted to make those super monstrous combat spiritual talismans. The procedure was extremely complicated and each stroke was meticulous. It took a lot of effort. Master Lu, is this difficult? Bao Bao asked, worried about personal gains and losses. Lu Xianlu could not help but laugh. I only find it strange that your requirements are too low. Do you really only need these things? Qin Wushuang said seriously. If Mr. Lu can help me make a few spiritual perception talismans, I will be extremely grateful. Lu Xianlu said lightly. This is simple, have you prepared the raw materials? Earlier, Qin Wushuang had observed Luo Ting's spiritual perception talisman and knew that it was made with a special jade stone. The material of the jade stone was very special, but according to Qin Wushuang's observation, he also had this kind of jade stone. Back then, when Senior Qin Shishun gave him the storage brocade pouch, other than crystals, there were some other things inside. For example, there were a few pieces of black metal and a few pieces of emerald jade. Those materials were very unique, especially those few pieces of jade. They were almost the same material as Luo Ting's communication jade token. However, the essence that Qin Wushuang felt was even more intense than Luo Ting's communication jade token. Therefore, Qin Wushuang felt that the development value of these jade stones should be superior to Luo Ting's communication jade tablet. Qin Wushuang didn't hide anything and took out all the pieces of jade. At first, Lu Xianlu seemed a little indifferent, but when his gaze stopped on those pieces of jade, his eyes suddenly shot out a color of surprise. Even the knowledgeable Lu Xianlu was amazed by these few pieces of jade. "You are a disciple to the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates?" Lu Xianlu asked lightly. Qin Wushuang said with a smile, "Mr. Lu, are these few pieces of jade suitable to make communication jade tokens?" Lu Xianlu let out a rare laugh. "Young man, you already know, why are you still asking me? The quality of this jade stone is good. Wouldn't it be a pity to use it to make communication jade tokens?" Bao Bao asked curiously, "Mr. Lu, could it be that this jade stone has other functions?" "Of course, but since you guys don't know, then never mind. There are a total of 6 pieces here. It's enough to make one communication jade token. How many do you need?" "Then make 10. Qin Wushuang thought for a moment and gave a number. Lu Xianlu weighed that jade stone in his hand and threw 5 pieces back to Qin Wushuang. "Keep it, this is the extreme green jade essence, it has many uses. To make 10 communication jade tokens, 1 piece is enough." Although Lu Xianlu appeared cold, he was a master with great strength of character. From his point of view, wasting materials was in fact a form of humiliation. Qin Wushuang put away the remaining extreme green jade essence. Vividly, his impression of Lu Xianlu had increased. Qin Wushuang realized that to him, it was extremely important to have the communication jade token. Especially when communicating with his family and teachers, it would be more convenient to have such thing. "Mr. Lu, what kind of strength do I need to activate this communication jade token?" Qin Wushuang was not familiar with this aspect. Of course, he was extremely concerned. Lu Xianlu said proudly, "If it were ordinary talisman craftsmen, they would need to be at the perfect stage to activate it. And the communication jade token I made, especially the one made from the extreme green jade essence, even if one had just entered the upper sky spiritual martial force, they would still be able to activate it." It could be activated at the upper sky spiritual martial force? Inwardly, Qin Wushuang was moved and felt much more relaxed. "Then I will have to trouble you, Mr. Lu." Lu Xianlu shot a glance at Qin Wushuang and said lightly, "Come pick up the jade token at this time tomorrow." After he had finished speaking, he took this extreme green jade essence and walked inside. He no longer paid attention to Qin Wushuang, Bao Bao and the others. "Boss, let's wait at the capital city of the Danxia prefecture and come back tomorrow?" After returning to the capital city of the Danxia prefecture, Qin Wushuang and the others were not in a rush to find an inn. Instead, they headed towards the Freelance Martial Artist Union. When they entered the Xian Yuan Mound again, the elite warriors sent by the heavenly Luo Daoist sect had already spread across the Xian Yuan Mound. Thus, Qin Wushuang wanted to inquire about the situation at the Freelance Martial Artist Union. When they arrived at the Freelance Martial Artist Union, it was bustling with activity as usual. A butler came out to receive them and welcomed Qin Wushuang and the others into the main hall. After they had ordered the food and drinks, Qin Wushuang asked, "Mr. Butler, are there any popular missions recently?" That butler laughed. "Of course there are popular missions. For the heavenly Luo Daoist sect's million bounty, the freelance martial artist world is going crazy over it. TSK, that kind of mission can only deceive people. We know it's impossible to complete it. We are not going to waste our time. That butler laughed apologetically. Although it's difficult, when luck comes, sometimes it's unstoppable. Perhaps that million bounty is yours? However, Lone asked, are there any clues? That butler said with a bitter smile, if there are any clues, then it's not your turn. To tell you the truth, that guy seemed to have disappeared from the world. Disappeared from the world? If he could disappear, could his family and sect also disappear? Qin Wushuang asked deliberately. It's truly strange. I heard that in the human countries, his family and sect had all disappeared without a trace. That butler shook his head and turned to leave. Did everyone hear? That Miss Mu Rong seemed to have appeared in the Xian Yuan mound. Since that Luo Ting is dead, Miss Mu Rong no longer needs to run away. Of course, she can return to the Xian Yuan mound. I never expected that the great successor of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect was killed by that Qin Wushuang from the human countries. Could that Qin Wushuang truly be an offspring of the heavenly Emperor Qin clan? Or else, how could he be so devilish? Since they all have the surname Qin, of course they are related to the heavenly Emperor Mountain. Now, the problem is whether or not this Qin Wushuang is a chess piece deliberately arranged by the heavenly Emperor Mountain and was nurtured from a young age. I don't think it's possible. If the heavenly Emperor Mountain had truly nurtured Qin Wushuang in secret, they would never have let him become enemies with the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. The heavenly Luo Daoist sect does not hold any grudges with the heavenly Emperor Qin clan. There's no need to make enemies for no reason. After all, the heavenly Emperor Qin clan already has enough enemies. These rogue cultivators were chatting idly with each other. Qin Wushuang only listened and did not participate. You guys say that Qin Wushuang is truly powerful. He had killed someone like Luo Ting without batting an eyelid. You say, compared to Luo Ting, what are us freelance martial artists? Yes, although that million bounty is a lot, it's not money we earned. A million bounty, I think it's money that will hasten one's life. Whoever is greedy will most likely lose their little life. This is not considered unjust. The most unjust ones are those freelance martial artists that died at the dispersed praying mountain. They did not know what was going on and got tricked by Luo Ting's vicious scheme to send themselves to their deaths. That's why a group of people with a bounty wanted to go to the heavenly Emperor Mountain to complain. Now that Luo Ting is dead, this is a case without a clue. Now that I think about it, the person that stopped the freelance martial artists at the dispersed praying mountain should be Qin Wushuang, right? You guys say that Qin Wushuang is truly exceptional. Such a monstrous person had walked out from the human countries. If this person had not been killed by the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, I am afraid the entire Tianxian land would tremble because of him. Just as these people were chatting with assurance, a butler walked out quickly from inside and said with a bitter smile, I say, friends, you guys should pay attention to your chatting. Although this is the Freelance Martial Artist Union, most likely there will be people from those major sects and powerhouses mixed in. You guys would not want to bring trouble to yourselves just because of some words, right? Initially at the Freelance Martial Artist Union at the Orderly Mountain Prefecture, everyone should have heard about how that Iron Holler died, right? When he mentioned Iron Holler, everyone's face turned green. Especially those freelance martial artists that had spoken the most, their faces were filled with fear. They looked around as if they were afraid that an elite warrior of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect would suddenly appear from the corner and kill them on the spot. Just when this great hall was in absolute silence, suddenly, a few freelance martial artists rushed in from outside the door. They shouted while panting heavily, "A fight! A fight! What's wrong? Where is the fight? Who is fighting with whom?" These freelance martial artists were all extremely bored people. Usually, when they had nothing to do, they wished for the world to be in chaos. When they heard that there was a show to watch, their blood boiled as they all wanted to go and watch the show. I heard that it's people of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan and the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect. At the profound Dragon Plain, 600 miles west of the capital city of the Danxia Prefecture, they are fighting fiercely. I heard that the Heavenly Emperor Mountain had already learned about the actions of the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect. They were extremely furious and sent elite warriors to investigate. They started to fight without a word. Heavenly Emperor Qin clan? Qin Wushuang's heart thumped. Had the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan finally gotten involved? If the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan got involved, then the entire situation would escalate. Most likely, the situation would develop into an uncontrollable state and set off a huge uproar. From there, it would trigger a major earthquake in the Xianyuan Mound. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 519. After receiving this news, Qin Wushuang immediately went to the Freelance Martial Artist Union. He found an inn and checked in. On the second day, Qin Wushuang took Bao Bao and Lone to head towards Lu Xianlu's shop. When they arrived at that remote alley, something unexpected happened to Qin Wushuang. In that small alley, a dozen elite warriors dressed in black had surrounded them. Each of these people had a gloomy expression as they surrounded Lu Xianlu's shop. When they saw Qin Wushuang and Bao Bao approaching, one of the young men who was waving a paper fan shot a few glances at Qin Wushuang and said lightly, "Unrelated people, do not come close." Qin Wushuang said with a frown, "I am here to pick up my custom-made goods, I am not an unrelated person." That young man said proudly, "Whatever you say doesn't count. If I say you are, then you are." This was a typical tyrannical argument. Qin Wushuang laughed coldly when he heard this. "This way, you have more authority than Master Lu? Stop with the nonsense, I told you to get lost, so get lost." Behind that young man, a few men in black berated him. Bao Bao and Lone, who stood next to Qin Wushuang, became furious. They seemed ready to make a move at any moment. Qin Wushuang waved his hand and stopped Bao Bao and Lone's impulse. At this time, Lu Xianlu walked out slowly from that shop and looked at this group of people coldly. When that young man waving the paper fan saw Lu Xianlu, he did not dare to neglect and retreated a few steps cautiously. Lu Xianlu smiled lightly. "Kid, since you dared to cause trouble here, what are you afraid of?" That young man stared at Lu Xianlu with a gloomy expression. "Master Lu, this time, our Dao warrior is extremely sincere. If you insist on doing things your own way and do not give us face, I am afraid this time, my Dao warrior will not be as friendly as before." Lu Xianlu gave a carefree smile. Apparently, he did not take this young man's threat to heart. After a moment, Lu Xianlu said lightly, "Luo Tongtian invited me to craft spiritual talismans for you guys, but I never agreed. Not to mention this time's request is too excessive. Go back and tell Luo Tongtian that I'm not interested in any of his suggestions. It's because your Heavenly Luo Daoist sect has violated my first principle." Lu Xianlu's first principle was to not receive anyone he disliked. Inwardly, Qin Wushuang was slightly moved. Could this group of people be people of the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect? At that moment, he didn't know how to maintain his composure and just stood to the side. A fierce look flashed across the young man's face as he uttered coldly, "Master Lu, I've already spoken nicely. Every time my head Dao warrior was rejected by you, although he was angry, he tolerated it. But this time, if you don't give me face, you'll have to bear the consequences." Lu Xianlu laughed heartily. "I wonder what kind of means Luo Tongtian has to deal with me." "Lu, cut the crap. Don't be so shameless. Are you going to lend me the observant finger jade plate or not? Today, I'm here to borrow it from you. If you don't give it to me, my head Dao warrior will come and take it personally in a few days." At that time, you won't be so polite anymore. Not to mention Lu Xianlu, even Qin Wushuang felt that this young man was overbearing when he heard his words. When he learned that these people were people of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, he felt an extra layer of concern. He wanted to know what kind of schemes these guys were planning. Most likely, each of the moves of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect would be extremely important to Qin Wushuang. Now, most likely, the object they were borrowing from Master Lu would not be an ordinary object. Suddenly, Bao Bao cried out, "Hey, if you want to borrow something, wait until we take our own stuff. Don't think that the heavenly Luo Daoist sect is so great. Let me tell you, with my master's identity, you can't afford to offend him." Bao Bao had deliberately spoken carelessly and caused that young man to look at him with a sidelong glance. He could not help but glance at Qin Wushuang and his friends. In the Xian Yuan Mound, one would not dare to speak big words without strength and background. Since the other party had said it this way, certainly he would not speak nonsense. When he thought here, this young man did not dare to neglect as he asked with a low voice, "What do you want to take?" "We asked Mr. Lu to make a few items. It seems that there is no need to tell you?" Bao Bao still spoke with an unconcerned tone. However, Qin Wushuang asked Lu Xianlu, "Mr. Lu, is everything ready? If you want to take something, come with me." Lu Xianlu flicked his sleeve and walked inside while ignoring those people of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Although that young man had a face full of misfortune, he did not dare to stop him. Although the head Dao warrior had the power to deal with Lu Xianlu, it did not mean that he had the power to do so. He could flaunt his power before Lu Xianlu. However, in the end, he still carried the name of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Or else, even if he had two guts, he would not have dared to act impudently before Lu Xianlu. Qin Wushuang remained calm and collected as he followed behind Lu Xianlu. Although that young man was annoyed, in the end, he did not stop them. He only looked at Qin Wushuang and his friends with alertness. Inwardly, he was calculating whether or not to deal with these people. Qin Wushuang knew the hesitation inside this young man's heart and was not worried. Instead, he followed behind Lu Xianlu calmly and walked into that shop. Lu Xianlu led them to the inner room. He put those 10 communication jade plates on a special tray. "Here, these are your things." Qin Wushuang took it and put it into the storage ring. That young man outside shouted again, "Lu Xianlu, don't hesitate, give us an explanation." Qin Wushuang frowned and said to Lu Xianlu, "Mr. Lu, do you need me to help you clean up this group of trash?" Lu Xianlu rolled his eyes. "Do you think I don't know how to kill people? It's not interesting to kill these little rats, let them be noisy." Lu Xianlu gave a long sigh and raised his head with a complicated expression. He looked around. Qin Wushuang followed Lu Xianlu's gaze and saw that this wide inner room was filled with different kinds of sculptures, including the one Lu Xianlu had carved at the door yesterday. However, the most eye-catching one was in the middle position. There was a girl carved from pure jade. From afar, she truly appeared as if a living person had walked out from a fairyland. Between the brows of this girl, there seemed to be a spirit. She gave people the feeling that she could fly away with the wind at any moment. This girl had picturesque features and a face like the ancient moon. She had a moving appearance. When Lu Xianlu's gaze stopped here, he gave another long sigh. "Little sister Qian, 300 years have passed. Do you feel lonely in the other world?" Lu Xianlu's tone seemed to be intoxicated. Qin Wushuang and Bao Bao also looked at each other in dismay. Yet, they did not dare to disturb him. They knew that most likely there was a period of history here, yet they did not dare to ask. They only stood on the side awkwardly. Lu Xianlu did not ask them to leave, nor did he ask them to stay. His hands trembled slightly as he caressed that jade sculpture. Vividly, the corner of his eyes had become somewhat moist. "Little sister Qian, that old thief Luo Tongtian, for 300 years, he always used different methods to torture me. It seems it's time to settle the grudge of 300 years. When Lu Xianlu said here, suddenly, a wave of rich murderous intentions shot out from his eyes. This murderous intention made Qin Wushuang shudder with fear. Otherwise, why would someone like Luo Tongtian care so much about this object? Obviously, this object was not ordinary. Taking it in his hand and looking at it, he only felt that the needle on this compass seemed to be spinning continuously. And the trajectory of the spinning was very strange, without any pattern at all. Qin Wushuang held it in his hand, but did not know how to use it for a moment. Lu Xianlu said lightly, Luo Tongtian wants to use this observant finger jade compass to harm others. How can I let him have his way? The person that Luo Tongtian wants to kill must be his enemy. How can I let Luo Tongtian have his way? Don't underestimate this object. Luo Tongtian has his reasons for wanting it so urgently. This item was made of a very special material and possessed a very powerful instructive ability. Luo Tongtian wants to use it to search for the location of his enemy. Bao Bao asked curiously, This object, is this miraculous? Lu Xianlu said, This object can collect spiritual perception automatically. Through the perception of the spiritual perception, it can lock onto the location of that person. And the success rate is 100%. If we don't even know where the other party is, how can we collect the spiritual perception? Apparently, Bao Bao did not believe it. This is the miraculous part of this object. As long as it is a place where that person had appeared, a place with powerful spiritual perception, as long as it is within 3 months, there will be some residual spiritual perception. As long as there is a little bit left, it will be collected and locked onto the enemy's location. Hearing such miraculous effects, Qin Wushuang found it unimaginable. At the same time, he felt a wave of coldness. If Luo Tongtian were to get this object, it would not be a good thing for him, Qin Wushuang. With this object, as long as he collected Qin Wushuang's spiritual perception, he could easily lock onto his location and encircle him. If Qin Wushuang did not know about this object and allowed it to fall into Luo Tongtian's hands, then even if Qin Wushuang were to die, he would most likely die without knowing why. He would not know where the problem was. Bao Bao thought quickly as he said with a chuckle, Mr. Lu, then why are you giving this to us? Could it be you do not have the confidence to deal with that Luo Tongtian? A trace of a strange smile emerged from the corner of Lu Xianlu's mouth. Indeed, I do not have the confidence to deal with Luo Tongtian. However, I already said before that Luo Tongtian's enemy is my friend. Guys, don't tell me that when you guys mentioned the name Luo Tongtian, you did not feel anything? As soon as he said these words, the expression of Qin Wushuang and Bao Bao changed. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 520. Clearly, this Lu Xianlu's tone was implying something. Qin Wushuang looked at Lu Xianlu with astonishment. Apparently, he also realized that this Lu Xianlu had become aware of their identity. Lu Xianlu shot a glance outside and said loudly, Take your things and leave quickly. As he spoke, he pushed Qin Wushuang lightly and sent his voice. Hurry up if you want to leave. Most likely, that Luo Tongtian has already arrived at the Danxia prefecture. Inwardly, Qin Wushuang was shocked as he looked at Lu Xianlu with surprise. Lu Xianlu revealed a strange smile. Young man, I believe in you. If someone can overthrow the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, I believe that person must be you. While this Lu Xianlu sent his voice, he pushed Qin Wushuang outside. Luo Tongtian and I share an irreconcilable hatred. This time, since he has come, he must find me to settle it. Here, the compass I gave you has a small interlayer. There is a map inside. Remember. When he said here, Lu Xianlu pushed Qin Wushuang and his friends out fiercely and swore, "Without the money to pay, why would you craft the spiritual talisman? Get lost." Qin Wushuang and his friends walked out with the momentum. That young man waving the paper fan looked at Qin Wushuang with a cold sneer and appeared to be examining him. Qin Wushuang glanced at that person and gave a cold sneer. He was too lazy to pay attention to him. "Kid, since you have gone in, do you still want to leave with ease?" that young man said coldly. "Stop." Qin Wushuang ignored him and continued to walk forward. If this young man took another step forward, he absolutely wouldn't mind killing him directly and killing all of them. Although they were some underlings, regardless, they were people of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. To Qin Wushuang, as long as they were people of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, they would be his sworn enemy. If it wasn't for the fact that he didn't want to cause more trouble for the time being, he probably would have immediately killed him. Seeing that Qin Wushuang was ignoring him, the young man's face changed slightly and he nodded his head lightly. The group of black-clothed warriors immediately surrounded Qin Wushuang and the others. Instantly, the atmosphere became tense and hostile. Qin Wushuang looked at the young man coldly and said indifferently, "Are you deliberately looking for trouble? If you don't want to die, then scram. Get lost." GMO also roared. The name of that young man was Luo Yi. He was also one of the more exceptional figures among the younger generation of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. This time, after Luo Ting's death, it was an opportunity for him. He intended to demonstrate his talent before the seniors of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. That was why he took the initiative to do this. Obviously, Luo Yi wanted to get things done. Therefore, he could not help but appear to be eager for quick success. When Luo Yi saw Qin Wushuang's calm and collected appearance, he had some doubts in his heart. This Luo Yi was different than Luo Ting. He was much more composed and would not be overly arrogant like Luo Ting. It was because sometimes arrogance would lead to hot-headedness. On the other hand, Luo Yi appeared to be calm. Among this calmness there were some treacherous intentions. He would not dare to make a move against that Lu Xianlu directly. However, he did not fear the others, especially when Qin Wushuang and the others had just entered Lu Xianlu's shop. Who knew whether or not Lu Xianlu had let them take away the special goods? Due to this consideration, of course Luo Yi would not let Qin Wushuang and the others leave easily. "What's going on?" Lu Xianlu walked out with a gloomy face. When Luo Yi saw Lu Xianlu coming out, he could not help but feel somewhat nervous. He said to Lu Xianlu, "Lu, for now, this matter has nothing to do with you. For your side, of course our head Dao warrior will reason with you. Mind your own business." Lu Xianlu said with a cold sneer, "You think I want to get involved in your business? If you want to fight or kill, scram. Don't dirty my turf." Lu Xianlu was not polite at all. He walked in front of Luo Yi and sized him up with cold eyes. "What, do you want me to personally send you away?" A complicated look flashed in Luo Yi's eyes. In front of Lu Xianlu, although Luo Yi dared to be arrogant, when it came to fighting, even 10 Luo Yis would not be enough to defeat Lu Xianlu. "Lu, your turf is going to be a bloodbath soon. Today, I'm going to do a preview in advance, so that you can be mentally prepared." Lu Xianlu's face darkened, and his shoulders seemed to move slightly. Luo Yi only felt that his whole body was light. The next moment, his whole body flew out and fell directly into a small ditch a few feet away. He flopped in a very embarrassing manner. Luo Yi flew into a rage out of humiliation. He jumped ashore, pointed at Lu Xianlu and shouted, "Lu, are you refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit? Just you wait, tomorrow our head Dao warrior will come to reason with you." Lu Xianlu sneered, "I'll give you one more breath to think about it. If you don't get out of here, Luo Tongtian will send people to drag your bodies back." Luo Yi looked at Lu Xianlu's expression and did not seem to be joking at all. He was a little hesitant. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw that Qin Wushuang and the others had gone far away. He gritted his teeth and waved his hand. "Let's go!" With that, he led a large number of black-clothed warriors and quickly followed Qin Wushuang. After Qin Wushuang and the others left, they immediately flew into the air. In this way, Luo Yi was in a dilemma. The group of black-clothed warriors he led were all masters of the Voiding Realm, but they could not fly in the air. Although Luo Yi was a master of the transformation Void Realm, when he saw that the other three were all masters of flying, even if he wanted to, he did not have the courage to chase after them. He stomped his feet, looked at the sky with hatred, took out the communication jade token, and sent a message. "Fourth Elder, just now a guy came to take something from Lu Xianlu. I am worried that Lu Xianlu has taken the thing away with him." "Who is that guy? Is he a disciple of Lu Xianlu?" the other party asked. Luo Yi was stunned and shook his head. Judging from his tone, he should not be a disciple of Lu Xianlu. But that guy's cultivation seems to be very high. He should be a disciple of a big family. His bearing is very extraordinary. Surrounded by so many people, he was still very calm. I am afraid that Lu Xianlu, even if he did not know him, would dare to transfer the thing away. This old man would rather destroy the thing than leave it to head Dao warrior. Luo Yi was almost gnashing his teeth in hatred, but there was nothing he could do. The other party pondered for a moment and no longer hesitated. "Describe that guy's appearance and I will immediately convey it to head Dao warrior." Luo Yi immediately described Qin Wushuang's current appearance. "There are 3 of them?" the fourth elder asked vigilantly. "That's right. All 3 of them looked very arrogant. I am afraid that these 3 guys have some background. Otherwise, they would not be so arrogant," the fourth elder said with a complicated tone. "Luo Yi, it is very likely that you have missed a great opportunity. 3 people, don't forget who our head Dao warrior is looking for in the end for the compass?" Luo Yi's heart twitched. He only felt sour, sweet, bitter and spicy in his mouth, with mixed feelings. Suddenly, a name popped up in his mind. Qin Wushuang. "Qin Wushuang?" Luo Yi cried out involuntarily. Luo Yi, you are eager to show yourself. How can you be so careless at such a critical moment? If those 3 people are really Qin Wushuang and his companions, you have missed a great opportunity this time. Haha, such a good opportunity was placed in front of you. But you missed it. Luo Yi was still somewhat in disbelief. Can it be so coincidental? The fourth elder sighed. Sometimes it is just so coincidental. Well, anyway, that person has left. It is useless to regret, just make up for it. I will immediately report this matter to the head Dao warrior and ask him to make a decision. Initially, this Luo Yi was only a young disciple. After all, he was not a designated successor like Luo Ting. Thus, he was not qualified to communicate with someone like Luo Tongtian through spiritual perception. He could only communicate through this fourth elder, who held the highest position in the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Only then, he could send the message to Luo Tongtian. Luo Yi felt extremely bitter as he said with hatred, Qin Wushuang, Qin Wushuang. Don't die too early. I am still counting on you to make a great contribution. Luo Yi was also an ambitious figure. Now that Luo Ting was dead, everyone was on the same level among the young generation of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Without Luo Ting's high position, everyone would fight for the position of the successor of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Therefore, Luo Yi had been particularly active recently. However, despite being active, what he had done in these days could be said to be useless. While Luo Yi was feeling remorseful, that fourth elder had passed the information reported by Luo Yi to the head Dao warrior Luo Tongtian. Certainly, Luo Tongtian had flipped out on the spot when he heard the news. Initially, Luo Tongtian had been refining a weapon recently. Thus, he had not had the time to come out. After hearing this news, Luo Tongtian even had the desire to strangle Luo Yi to death. However, up to this point it would be useless to only get angry. Luo Tongtian could only suppress the anger in his heart and instructed, "Send 2 law enforcement elders to the Dragon Origin Plane. Regardless, we must stop those 3 guys. That bastard Lu Xianlu will certainly let them take away that jade plate." Luo Tongtian and that Lu Xianlu had not been enemies for 1 or 2 years. He knew Lu Xianlu's style too well. As long as it was something Luo Tongtian wanted, not only would he not give it away, he would think of ways to destroy it. As long as it was something Luo Tongtian wanted to do, Lu Xianlu would think of ways to obstruct him. He would only feel happy when he had ruined the matter. The enmity between these two had been entangled for hundreds of years. The cause was a woman. That woman and Lu Xianlu were in love, but Luo Tongtian snatched her away. As a result, the beautiful woman became depressed and died without any illness. It was also because of this that Lu Xianlu hated Luo Tongtian so much that he wished he could eat his flesh and sleep on his skin. Unfortunately, his strength was lower than Luo Tongtian's. As for Luo Tongtian, his hatred for Lu Xianlu was not light either. He believed that if it were not for Lu Xianlu's existence, his woman would not have died of depression. Therefore, all these years, Luo Tongtian had been thinking of ways to humiliate Lu Xianlu. Due to the pressure, he did not kill Lu Xianlu. However, he used different ways to humiliate Lu Xianlu. All these years, Lu Xianlu's life had not been easy. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 521. On the other hand, Qin Wushuang left the capital city of the Danxia prefecture quickly and found a remote place. He changed his outfit on the spot and put on a mask. Immediately, he changed his entire appearance. After he had finished everything, he rushed towards the profound dragon plain. He really wanted to know if it was truly people of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan that had stepped out. To him, this information was extremely important. If it was people of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan, Qin Wushuang would never look on without lifting a finger. He would not let people of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan bleed for no reason. When he was about to arrive at the profound dragon plain, Qin Wushuang gradually slowed down his footstep. He took out that jade plate and studied it. Then, he arrived at the hidden layer mentioned by Lu Xianlu. He clicked it lightly with his finger and a roll of silk map popped out from that hidden layer. Although the map was very simple with only a few lines, the terrain was very clear. Qin Wushuang looked at this map and saw that it was a place of the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. The Divine Brilliance Prefecture was the prefecture where the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect was located. It had a vast territory and many powerful powerhouses. It could be said that it was a place blessed by outstanding people. Additionally, since ancient times, many legends from the immemorial era had been passed down from that Divine Brilliance Prefecture. It had made many people fascinated. Therefore, the Divine Brilliance Prefecture had always been an extremely active prefecture in the Xian Yuan Mound. As Qin Wushuang looked at this map, for a time, he did not know what mysterious place this map would lead to. Currently, he was still far away from the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. Qin Wushuang did not think too much and put that map into his storage ring. Then, he also put that jade plate into the ring. In the blink of an eye, he had arrived near the profound dragon plain. The profound dragon plain was located between 2 mountains. With a stream between the 2 mountains, it was named the Profound Dragon. That vast valley next to the stream of the Profound Dragon was named the Profound Dragon Plain. At this time, many martial artists had gathered around the Profound Dragon Plain. Clearly, these people wanted to witness this great battle. For your information, although the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan was in an extremely difficult situation, they were after all a first-rate powerhouse among the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates. Currently, even a second-rate powerhouse like the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect dared to bare their fangs at the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Clearly, they had violated the authority of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Everyone wanted to see what kind of methods the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan would use to deal with the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect. If the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect could inflict severe damage to the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan during the process of resisting, it would be a great opportunity for the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Perhaps this opportunity could allow the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect to leap into the Dragon's Gate and become an undisputed first-rate powerhouse. It was even possible for them to occupy a seat among the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates. While it was lively at this moment, none of the parties involved in the Dragon Abyss Plane were present. However, judging from the traces of battle on the scene, it should be the aftermath of a fierce battle. Qin Wushuang blended into the crowd and coldly observed the traces at the scene. He continued to search for them, only to find that the people of these two forces seemed to have gone deep into the mountains. Qin Wushuang followed him into the depths of the mountain. The deeper they went, the tighter Qin Wushuang felt his heart tighten. Along the way, corpses kept lying on the side of the road. From the attire of these people, although the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect had occupied the majority, it seemed that a few disciples of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan had also died. Qin Wushuang's heart was heavy. As he watched the corpses of the disciples of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan lying in the wilderness, he felt extremely sad. He took away each corpse he saw. Regardless of whether these disciples of the Heavenly Emperor Mountain had died because of me, in the end, they had died at the hands of the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect. For this matter, I have an undeniable responsibility. Although I do not have the ability to bring the dead back to life, the only thing I can do is to send their souls back to their hometowns. Along the way, he had taken away close to 10 corpses. Towards the end, he slowly lost track of the trail. However, judging from the situation along the way, the battle should have been extremely bitter. Qin Wushuang was speechless. After some consideration, he decided to stop hesitating and continue to rush forward. Regardless of the situation, the earlier he arrived at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, the earlier he would fulfill his wish. When he returned to the Dragon Abyss Plane, many freelance martial artists had gradually dispersed. Qin Wushuang did not linger and continued his journey. Not long after Qin Wushuang had left the Dragon Abyss Plane, that Luo Yi had arrived at the Dragon Abyss Plane. Accompanying him was a skinny elder. He was the 4th elder, the person with the highest position in his clan. 4th elder, if that person is Qin Wushuang, surely he would have come to this Dragon Abyss Plane. Luo Yi said solemnly. However, that 4th elder said, I will come when I receive your news. Much time has been wasted in the middle. Even if he had come, he should have left by now. Luo Yi shook his head. 4th elder, how could he be Qin Wushuang? I will not believe it no matter what you say. The 4th elder said with a somewhat displeased tone. Luo Yi, this time you are too smart for your own good. You went to spy on Lu Xianlu, and you went to harass him openly. If you didn't have the name of the head Dao warrior to suppress Lu Xianlu, I am afraid you would all be dead now. Luo Yi felt incredibly ashamed, yet he still argued. 4th elder, I was thinking for the head Dao warrior, for the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect. If we had let Lu Xianlu take the jade plate, then it would be difficult for the head Dao warrior to get that thing. In the midst of their conversation, suddenly 2 figures scuttled out from the deep mountain like lightning. They were 2 elite warriors dressed in the uniform of the law enforcement elders. Elder Suiwe, Elder Han Xing, how is the battle? The position of the 4th elder in the sect was equivalent to ranking 4th among all the elders. Thus, he held a high position. Although these two law enforcement elders held many privileges, they would not dare to act presumptuously before the fourth elder. They spoke the truth. There are a total of 15 people from the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Only 5 or 6 of them are left after being surrounded by us. These 5 or 6 have already killed their way out of the encirclement. Our elite warriors have also chased after them in different directions. However, since they were able to break out of the heavy encirclement, it proves that they possess superior strength. This time, although there were people chasing after them, they did not have much hope of success. The fourth elder stopped and said to those two law enforcement elders, "I have received the order from the head Dao warrior to dispatch you two to assist in killing that Qin Wushuang. There is a clue here. Let Luo Yi talk to you guys." However, those two law enforcement elders said in a low voice, "Fourth elder, I am afraid there is another matter that I must tell you guys. Along the way, disciples of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan had died in battle. However, when we were returning, we discovered that those corpses had all disappeared." "There is such a strange thing?" The fourth elder could not help but draw a breath of cold air. This kind of thing sounded eerie. The dead bodies had disappeared without a reason, and the ones that had disappeared were all disciples of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Could it be that someone had deliberately moved the corpses of the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan? Or perhaps there are still spies from the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan hiding in this area. Suddenly, that Luo Yi slapped his forehead. "Fourth elder, could it be that Qin Wushuang had truly escaped here?" The expression of the fourth elder changed. "Search with all your might. Also, ask those onlookers." Those freelance martial artists kept being called over. Initially, they did not want to cooperate. Later on, under the strong pressure of the fourth elder, these people even found it difficult to breathe. They could only follow his orders. "Listen, my fourth elder has something to ask you guys. If you know something, then speak. If you don't speak nonsense. If you know something, if you don't speak, the consequences will not be something you can imagine." Luo Yi appeared to be a fox exploiting the tiger's might. "Not long ago, did you see anyone enter the deep mountains?" The fourth elder asked straightforwardly. Yes, many people had gone in. However, they seemed to have gone in for a while and then came out. Then, were there any suspicious people that appeared with 3 people, or 1 person with 2 spiritual beasts? The fourth elder appeared to be extremely patient. 3 people? One of the freelance martial artists scratched his head. "I seem to remember that there were 3 people who appeared unfamiliar. These 3 people had gone in and came out after a long time. I remember that they seemed to have already left." "How long had they left?" Instantly, the fourth elder was moved inwardly. "It won't be long, it won't be more than an hour," that person said solemnly. "Not more than an hour?" Inwardly, the fourth elder was overjoyed. Half an hour, even if they could fly, they would not have flown too far. Instantly, he took out the communication jade plate and contacted his allies of the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect to come to their aid. They would set up a line of defense around the fortresses and main passes of the Danxia prefecture. Although the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect did not have enough manpower to surround the Danxia prefecture, regardless, it would be the best choice to set up a defense at the main passes and fortresses. "Fourth elder, those 3 people must be Qin Wushuang." Luo Yi appeared somewhat excited. If it was truly Qin Wushuang, then without a doubt, Luo Yi had made some contributions. Immediately, Sui Wei and Han Xing, the 2 law-enforcing elders, followed the order and chased after them. These 2 law-enforcing elders were elite warriors at the profound void martial stage. They would only have the confidence to deal with Qin Wushuang if both of them went out at the same time. Or else, they would not have the confidence to let any one of them go. The fourth elder would be in charge of dispatching, and these 2 law-enforcing elders would be in charge of the pursuit. The other people who were setting up the defense at the border would be in charge of guarding the entrance. It was equivalent to setting up a secret inescapable net. They would wait for Qin Wushuang to enter. On the other hand, after Qin Wushuang had left the profound dragon plane, he did not let down his guard. He knew that most likely, his ruckus at Lu Xianluo's place had alerted Luo Tongtian. Now, he could only hope that Luo Tongtian would not come to greet him personally. If it was Luo Tongtian who came, the battle would become one-sided. They would not have any wishful thinking to face an elite warrior at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. Thus, to avoid Luo Tongtian's greeting, he could only continue to hide his identity. Only by not exposing his identity would it be a foolproof plan. As long as it was not an elite warrior at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage, Qin Wushuang still had some confidence. Even if it was not at the perfect void martial stage, he would still have the chance to escape. These 2 days I spent almost all my time in the bus and the venue. I am very tired. I finally wrote 2 chapters. Tomorrow I will fly to Shanghai and the day after tomorrow I can go home. Haha. It is brewing and exploding. Continue to ask for monthly votes. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 522. Qin Wushuang did not encounter any major battles at the profound dragon plane. Thinking of the death of those disciples of the heavenly Emperor Qin clan, Qin Wushuang felt waves of sadness. He already realized that regardless of whether he was willing or not, he was tied to the heavenly Emperor Qin clan's war chariot. However, Qin Wushuang was also unperturbed. He was well aware of the rules of this world. When the nest was overturned, no eggs would remain intact. If the heavenly Emperor Qin clan were to fall, their enemies would certainly carry out a great purge of the Qin branches across the entire Xian Yuan mound. This purge would cause all the branches of the heavenly Emperor Qin clan, and even all the people with the surname Qin in the Tian Xian land, to suffer. Therefore, regardless of whether Qin Wushuang was willing or not, this was the cruel reality that he must face. Standing at a mountain pass not far from the border of the Danxia prefecture, Qin Wushuang fixed his gaze to the front. He was waiting for the news. The Moon Palace Jade Hare, Sky Pilfered Mole, and Hissing Sky Phoenix he had sent out had already split up to scout the situation. Hissing Sky Phoenix was the first to return. The news he brought back made Qin Wushuang extremely surprised. Master, I am certain that people of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect are guarding each of the exits of the Danxia prefecture. However, their people can only defend those exits. For some small roads and passes they cannot take care of all of them. Qin Wushuang smiled lightly. This way it seems that our whereabouts have been exposed. However, for sure they do not know our exact appearance. Therefore, this time, we must make sure that the heavenly Luo Daoist sect is empty-handed. Within 2 hours, Jade Hare and Mole had returned and reported to Qin Wushuang the exact situation they had scouted. Qin Wushuang spread out the map and said with a smile, "Look, the territory of this Danxia prefecture is open and outward-oriented. To leave the border, there is a fan-shaped exit on this map. We can go in any direction. According to the information you have collected, this northwest area should be the weakest area. However, if we head northwest to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, we will take a lot of unnecessary detours." Some lights shot out from Qin Wushuang's eyes as he said with a profound tone, "Let's not go to the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan for our next stop." Not going to the Qin family? Where are we going? Bao Bao was full of questions. "Let's take a detour to the Divine Brilliance Manor," Qin Wushuang said coldly. The light in his eyes grew brighter. To the Divine Brilliance Manor. From Qin Wushuang's eyes, Lone and Bao Bao had read the ruthless murderous intent. "Boss, do you want to create havoc at the heavenly Luo Daoist sect?" Bao Bao asked with his blood boiling. Bao Bao, if we stay passive and wait for them to chase after us, we will only be in a passive state. We will never be able to turn the situation around. We might as well take the initiative to attack. Qin Wushuang continued to speak. Now, since the heavenly Luo Daoist sect has moved out on a large scale, for sure, the interior of the sect is even more empty. Thus, we only need to find an opportunity. Perhaps we will receive a miraculous effect. Naturally, this suggestion caused Bao Bao and Lone to feel extremely excited. In fact, they also felt aggrieved when they kept getting beaten passively. If they could take the initiative to attack and show the heavenly Luo Daoist sect some power, it would certainly be extremely exciting. Bao Bao said, "Boss, in the past when we took the initiative to attack, the results were surprisingly good. Also, since that senior Lu Xianlu had given us that map, he must have his reasons. We should go take a look. What if senior Lu Xianlu had left something unexpected for us?" These words were exactly what Qin Wushuang was thinking inwardly. Of course, they would not refuse when he asked for the opinion of those 5 sealed spiritual beasts. Instantly, Qin Wushuang and his group headed towards the northwest direction of the Danxia prefecture. Although theoretically, the defense of this area would be weaker, Qin Wushuang and his group did not dare to be overly optimistic. Of course, they had no reason to be pessimistic. Being a second-rate powerhouse, although the heavenly Luo Daoist sect was extremely powerful, in the end, they could not be compared to those first-rate powerhouses. Of course, despite being a second-rate sect, to the current Qin Wushuang, the strength of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect was still a colossal existence. Not to mention those super-elite warriors at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. Even those at the perfect void martial stage would make Qin Wushuang feel extremely uncomfortable. And the heavenly Luo Daoist sect had close to 10 perfect void martial stage warriors, plus 20 or 30 profound void martial stage warriors. Such power structure allowed the heavenly Luo Daoist sect to hold a high position in the Xian Yuan Mound. However, even with such powerful strength, it was still not easy to kill one person in the vast territory of the Xian Yuan Mound. When Qin Wushuang arrived at the northwest border of the Danxia prefecture, this was a small border town. At this moment, even those 5 great spiritual beasts had transformed into human forms. Their group had 8 people. Although it attracted a lot of attention, it would reduce the guesses of the outside world. After all, Qin Wushuang's group of 3 was already an open secret of the Xian Yuan Mound. As long as 3 people appeared, it would easily cause all kinds of guesses. This small border town was called the Morning Sun Town. To the Danxia prefecture, this small town could almost be ignored. To ordinary freelance martial artists and adventurers, this Morning Sun Town was a rather important place. At this Morning Sun Town, the heavenly Luo Daoist sect had set up an ambush with a total of 4 people. And all of them were at the profound void martial stage. Although this strength was not super powerful, it was already a dazzling group. To all the defensive lines, this defensive entrance could only be counted as an intermediate level. After all, they did not have the help of a perfect void martial stage warrior. However, to Qin Wushuang and his group, 4 profound void martial stage warriors were also a great challenge. Of course, before Qin Wushuang and his group had come here, they had already made all the necessary preparations. They already had a strategy to deal with it. In a call on the west side of the Morning Sun Town, the 4 elders of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect gathered together. Among these elders, 3 had the surname Luo, and the remaining 1 had the surname Zhuo. The leader was called Luo Zhan. He was a guy with a tall figure and scarlet eyebrows. Although this person was at the profound void martial stage, he was much stronger than most profound void martial stage warriors. This person was the leader of these 4. Now Luo Zhan also unfolded a map and analyzed it. Look, if we depart from that profound dragon plane, there are a dozen of paths to exit the border. Our path is also among them. I don't know why, but in these past few days, I have a strange premonition that Qin Wushuang will pass through us. The other three elders all laughed. Zhan, this is the hope from your heart. Thus, you think it's a premonition. To tell you the truth, if that guy passes through here, this great merit will fall on our heads. Yes, it's truly unbelievable. It's a miracle that a kid from the human countries could make the heavenly Luo Daoist sect go to war. What human countries? It's clear that he is a chess piece set up by the heavenly Emperor Qin clan in secret. Humph, the heavenly Emperor Qin clan. By the way, speaking of the heavenly Emperor Mountain, this time, our second Dao warrior went to visit the Sound of Thunder sect and the heavenly punishing villa. I wonder how the discussion went. That Luo Zhan said with a cold sneer. Although they are all powerhouses of the heavenly Emperor Eight Gates, when dealing with the heavenly Emperor Qin clan, they would rather have more people. How could there be any problems? Zhan, say, if the heavenly Luo Daoist sect can seize this opportunity and pull down the heavenly Emperor Mountain, would we have the chance to enter the heavenly Emperor Eight Gates? After a moment of thinking, Luo Zhan still gave a bitter smile and said, the heavenly Emperor Eight Gates are not that simple. Perhaps the heavenly Luo Daoist sect can rank in the top 20 of the Xian Yuan Mound. However, don't forget, there are many first-rate powerhouses that are eyeing us covetously. There were 12 first-rate powerhouses in the Xian Yuan Mound. There were many indicators to distinguish the first-rate powerhouses. However, there was only one core. In this powerhouse, there must be an elite warrior of the Supreme Dao stage. As long as there was one elite warrior of the Supreme Dao stage, even if it was one that had just entered the Supreme Dao stage, it meant that this powerhouse had already reached a higher level. Even if the other indicators were lacking and they had fewer elite warriors, they would be qualified to be promoted to a first-rate powerhouse. In the Xian Yuan Mound, there were exactly 12 powerhouses that possessed the Supreme Dao stage. Of course, these 12 powerhouses did not include the totem powerhouse, the Xian Yuan clan. The Xian Yuan clan was high and aloof and detached from worldly affairs. There was no need to compare them here. Naturally, the heavenly Emperor Eight Gates were first-rate powerhouses. However, the first-rate powerhouses would not necessarily be the heavenly Emperor Eight Gate. The competition for the positions of these 8 gates was intense. Besides the 8 gates, there were 4 other first-rate powerhouses eyeing them covetously. In terms of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, there were still some differences. This Luo Zhan had a clear understanding of himself. However, as long as the heavenly Luo Daoist sect continued to develop with this momentum, if the head Dao warrior were to enter the Supreme Dao stage, that day would not be far away. While these 4 were sparring, suddenly, Luo Zhan stood up and looked downwards. In the distance, outside the Morning Sun town, 2 martial artists were walking towards them while talking and laughing. Someone is coming. Luo Zhan called out and the 4 of them jumped into the hidden forest. They pricked up their ears and spread out their spiritual perception to observe. In a moment, those 2 had approached them. From the appearance of these 2, they did not seem to be in a hurry as they were moving at an incredibly slow speed. Big brother, do you truly want to go to the Divine Brilliance Prefecture? One of the fair-skinned and handsome young men asked a lean guy who was traveling with him. Of course, when have I ever lied? That lean guy answered. However, that heavenly Luo Daoist sect is not an ordinary powerhouse. I always feel uneasy when dealing with them. Can we really get the 1,000,000 gold bounty? The fair-skinned young man was still somewhat hesitant. Don't worry, if they don't give me the money first, I will not tell them the information even if you beat me to death. Luo Zhan and the others had been secretly listening to the conversation between these 2. Inwardly they were moved. Almost at the same time, they thought, Could it be these two guys know the information related to that Qin Wushuang? At the moment, they listened even more attentively. That fair-skinned young man said again, "Big brother, in fact, that Qin Wushuang is truly bold." Currently, people of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect are everywhere in the Danxia prefecture. He still dared to come. Humph, that kid is extremely cunning. The heavenly Luo Daoist sect is dreaming if they want to catch him with their numbers. Okay, we must move faster. Or else, haha. Big brother, I still don't understand. Since you have the information, why didn't you find those people in charge of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect at the Danxia prefecture directly? And to go to that divine brilliance prefecture, aren't you giving up what's close at hand to seek what's far away? What do you know? I will tell them now that he caught that kid in a few moves. Our contribution will not be reflected. We must let Qin Wushuang go far away, then we will tell the secret to the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. This way, it will show the value of our information. Besides, there are only some law enforcement elders here. I don't believe that you want them to pay the 1,000,000 gold bounty on the spot. The two of them chatted and laughed as they walked over. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 523. Luo Zhan and the others waited until the two turned the corner before revealing themselves. After exchanging glances with each other, Luo Zhan asked, "Do any of you know these two? Judging from their attire, they should be wandering cultivators. There are so many wandering cultivators in the world, how could we know them? These two actually know Qin Wushuang's whereabouts? Judging from their tone, they seem to have a card up their sleeves. No matter where Qin Wushuang goes, they will know." The other three elders looked at Luo Zhan, obviously waiting for him to make a decision. "What do you think?" Luo Zhan wasn't in a hurry to express his opinion. Instead, he asked for his companions' opinions. "I think these two aren't speaking without thinking. From what they said, Qin Wushuang's group should still be within Danxia prefecture. Why don't we chase them back and interrogate them? Even if we force them to confess, we don't have to be afraid that they won't talk." This elder was called Luo Ba, and his style had always been swift and fierce. This suggestion was immediately approved by the other elders. They all looked at Luo Zhan, waiting for him to make a decision. Luo Zhan thought for a moment and felt that the two wandering cultivators shouldn't be much of a threat. He nodded and said, "All right, Luo Ba, Luo Xing, you two are responsible for bringing them back. Remember, do it cleanly." Sigh, they just left. It will only take 15 minutes to catch them. Luo Ba even felt that the two of them didn't need to go together. "Brother Zhan, I can go alone. Let Luo Xing stay here." Luo Zhan was steadfast. "Since we are going, we must make sure nothing goes wrong. It will be safer if two people go." Luo Ba didn't dare to disobey. He nodded and said, "Then let's go together. Brother Zhan, I'll have to trouble you here." Luo Zhan nodded indifferently. "Go. Be quick and come back quickly." Luo Ba and Luo Xing accepted the order and left. They quickly chased after the two wandering cultivators. They originally thought that it wouldn't be difficult to catch up to the two. However, they still hadn't caught up to them after 15 minutes following their auras. Luo Xing couldn't help but hesitate. "Brother Ba, could we have gone the wrong way?" Luo Ba said, "You are also an expert. Do you think we are chasing the wrong person?" Indeed, they had followed the auras of those two people all the way, so there was no way they would make a mistake. Furthermore, the aura continued to spread all the way down. This aura gave them the feeling that the two were right in front of them. However, this feeling led them to keep chasing forward, but even so, they couldn't catch up no matter what. After chasing them for about 2 hours, he still felt that the two of them were right in front of him. After more than 2 hours, there was still nothing. This caused them to fall into a dilemma, and it was hard to back down. Either give up or move on. On Luo Zhan's side, Elder Zhuo and Elder Zhuo still remained where they were. Suddenly, two more people appeared from the opposite side. These two people were running towards them at lightning speed. After the two of them ran out of the pass, they flew into the air and quickly flew forward. "Boss, we finally made it out of the Danxia prefecture. Haha, let's go, let's go." This voice sounded extremely cheerful and full of joy. "Next stop, the Heavenly Emperor Mountain." That person called Boss responded and sped away. Inwardly, Luo Zhan and Elder Zhuo were shocked. They looked at the horizon with astonishment and immediately chased after them. It was because almost at the same time, a thought flashed across their minds: Qin Wushuang. The direction these two people were flying in was completely different from the direction the previous two had left in. Luo Zhan and Elders were chased after them quickly, and instantly, they had chased a few hundred miles away. When they turned into a mountain valley, suddenly, those two dropped down into this valley. Luo Zhan knew that most likely, the other party had discovered their pursuit. Instantly, he made a hand gesture and also chased after them. They also dropped into the valley. "Come out." That Elders was said with a cold sneer. "Where do you think you can hide in here?" Although Luo Zhan felt that the strength of the other party would not pose any threat, he did not dare to let down his guard. He knew that this matter was of utmost importance. If the other party was Qin Wushuang, then he must be 120% alert. While that Elder Zhuo was still cursing, Luo Zhan did not speak a word and observed the surrounding situation with a cold sneer. Suddenly, his gaze stopped at a giant tree on the opposite side. Two people walked out from behind the giant tree, and one of them said with a cold sneer, "Who said we are going to hide?" When Luo Zhan saw these two people, he exchanged a glance with that Elder Zhuo. With a jump, he dropped to the opposite side and was only a few dozen meters away from those two. "Humph, you two, who are you? Why are you sneaking around? Leave your names." Elder Zhuo asked coldly. "Who is sneaking around?" One of them said leisurely, "It seems that you are the one sneaking around, right? Why are you following behind us? Are you scheming something?" Luo Zhan still did not let down his guard as he sized these two people before him and said lightly, "Everyone is smart, straightforward people do not speak in riddles. We are elders of the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect, we know your identity. Why don't you speak frankly?" Heavenly Luo Taoist sect. One of the young men smiled lightly and said with interest, "Then, you must think that one of us is Qin Wushuang, right?" "Ha ha ha, then, are you or are you not?" Luo Zhan asked with a gloomy tone. That person smiled lightly. "If I say no, you will be disappointed. Could it be that you want to kill us to vent your anger?" "If I say yes, you will be wild with joy, right?" Murderous intentions emerged from Luo Zhan's face. "Regardless, since you are here, don't think about leaving." That young man still carried that playful smile on his face. "Then I will tell you the truth, I am Qin Wushuang. You have found the right person." The expression on Luo Zhan and Elder Zhuo changed drastically as the other party had admitted it. This was completely out of their expectations. Even if the other party was him, he would have denied it flatly. If he was not, he would have denied it to the end. However, the other party had admitted it. This made Luo Zhan and Elder Zhuo feel extremely surprised. As soon as this feeling of surprise passed, a wave of coldness emerged from their back. "Are you truly Qin Wushuang?" Luo Zhan inhaled a breath of cold air and asked coldly. Qin Wushuang said leisurely, "Of course." As soon as he had finished speaking, suddenly, Luo Zhan felt a wave of strong movements from the ley lines. Suddenly, the entire surrounding terrain shook violently. Next, suddenly, a wave of black clouds pressed down from the sky. A body as big as a mountain pressed down directly. This giant spiritual beast smashed down from the sky and spat out rainbows from its mouth as it tried to swallow Luo Zhan. This wave of suction was extremely powerful and caused Luo Zhan's entire body to tremble. Instantly, Luo Zhan realized that something was wrong as he shouted, "We have fallen into a trap! Zhuogang, quickly send your spiritual perception to the others and ask them to come to the outside of the Morning Sun Town to help." Qin Wushuang laughed. "It's too late." That elder Zhuogang, did not have time to take out his spiritual perception communication jade tablet. In midair, a fireball as red as the blazing sun directly sprayed over and crashed into his chest. This wave of power was overbearing and vigorous. Moreover, it carried a very strong burning power. It made Zhuogang feel as if his entire body was about to melt. His muscles tightened as if his skin was about to burn immediately. Zhuogang shouted loudly and rushed forward to shake off this powerful fireball attack. This fireball rushed over, turned, and circled around Zhuogang's chest. It was just that it was tangled up, and almost at the same time, a beam of white light pierced out from the slanted ground. With his unique light, the unique light on his forehead shone brightly. It was like a super sharp blade that drilled over. The power of this drilling attack rushed out streams of spiraling energy, twisting the void. This made Zhuogang unable to breathe at all as he rushed forward with all his might. However, his speed was too fast, causing him to almost lose control of his body. The pincer attack of the two powerful forces caused Zhuogang's moves to be exhausted. Qin Wushuang saw it clearly. Both of his hands moved continuously. The sword qi of the coagulated sword brought out a colorful impact force. It was like a loaded bullet that continuously shot towards Zhuogang's chest. Qin Wushuang was almost directly in front of Zhuogang. This coagulated sword was no longer the same as before. It was at the third level, and was also the peak sword essence that Qin Wushuang could unleash currently. The third level, Gang Sword. When this Gang Sword was shot out, its attack power was naturally imaginable. Although he was an expert of the profound void martial stage, under the situation where his defense was exhausted, he was unable to dodge the third wave of attack. Moreover, Qin Wushuang's coagulated sword was majestic and Zhuogang could not dodge at all. It was as if he had become a target and was directly hit by Qin Wushuang. This Gang Sword, 10 consecutive strikes, did not miss. All of them were concentrated on Zhuogang's chest. Almost at the same time, Zhuogang's body suddenly stopped. He looked at Qin Wushuang in disbelief. His eyes were completely filled with astonishment. He opened his mouth, but did not know what to say. His eyes gradually dimmed. Bang! Zhuogang pushed the golden mountain and the jade pillar. His body directly fell down, and he could not get up again. Luo Zhan saw this scene from the corner of his eyes, and could not help but tremble. He was restrained by pure altar precious pig, and could not spare any limbs to help Zhuogang. The most important thing was that he did not expect Zhuogang to be defeated so quickly. One should know that although Zhuogang's cultivation was not as high as Luo Zhan's, it was not to the extent that he would be defeated in a few moves. If Zhuogang was defeated so easily, then Luo Zhan would not have any chance at all. When he thought of this, half of his heart turned cold. His body rushed quickly, jumped out of the battle circle, and wanted to run away. How could pure altar precious pig allow him to escape? It roared loudly and charged forward without regard for its own safety. This fighting style made Luo Zhan's whole body tremble. It was simply a desperate fight. That one-horn mystical horse and hissing sky phoenix also rushed over from the other two sides almost at the same time. The 3-in-1 encirclement did not even give Luo Zhan a chance to escape. He could only grit his teeth and hold the battle blade in his hand. His entire body congealed into a ball of sharp light and slashed at hissing sky phoenix. It was a fighting style that risked his life. Qin Wushuang looked at this scene leisurely. He already held the hegemon breaking formation spear in his hand. Vividly, through this battle, he felt that he had gained some new knowledge regarding the comprehension of the void martial stage. Finally, I'm back in Shanghai. I'll be home tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 524. Luo Zhan's body was like a ball of raging flame as he dashed towards hissing Sky Phoenix. The force of the dash tore the space apart and arrived in front of hissing Sky Phoenix. The sound of the air exploding in the void brought about waves of electromagnetic airflow and distorted chirp. The ear-piercing chirps pierced through the sky and startled all the birds and beasts in the surrounding mountains. All of them fled in panic. In an instant, it was as if the earth had been broken and the sky had been shattered. Hissing Sky Phoenix was not afraid of Luo Zhan's imposing manner. However, it knew that it could not take the attack head-on. It flashed and launched 2 fireballs from the side. The 2 fireballs pierced through the sky like 2 fire dragons and shot towards Luo Zhan's ribs. Luo Zhan had just obtained the space to break through. When he was hit by the 2 fire dragons, he felt extremely uncomfortable. However, he did not dare to stay any longer and continued to dash forward. Moving forward was his only choice and the only way for him to survive. If he could not break through the encirclement immediately, what awaited him would be death. At the thought of this, Luo Zhan chose to break through the encirclement immediately even if he might be injured. However, the 3 spiritual beasts of the profound void realm had been working together for many years. Their tacit understanding of battle tactics had reached an unbelievable level. Hissing Sky Phoenix had just reached the end of the trajectory of the 2 fireballs. One Horn Mystical Horse had already charged over and blocked Luo Zhan's path. Luo Zhan did not stop his attack. He maintained his charging posture and slashed his saber towards One Horn Mystical Horse. Unlike Hissing Sky Phoenix, One Horn Mystical Horse's strength lay in head-on attacks. In a head-on attack, One Horn Mystical Horse was not afraid of any experts of the same realm. Seeing the ray of light approaching, the horn on One Horn Mystical Horse's forehead suddenly expanded in the wind. It was like a knight's spear and went against the saber light directly. The 2 murderous auras collided in the air and created a terrifying roar. Distorted ripples spread out rapidly in the void. The strong sound of metal colliding spread out along with the ripples. The sound reverberated around the valley. Luo Zhan and One Horn Mystical Horse collided head-on. Luo Zhan's hand was numb and he took a few steps back to stop his blood from boiling. What a powerful impact! Luo Zhan was even more worried. Of course, One Horn Mystical Horse's situation wasn't any better than Luo Zhan's. However, the 12 sealed spirit beasts were extremely ferocious. Even though they were at a disadvantage in a head-on clash, they would never back down. Moreover, it knew that the other party would definitely not feel any better than it did. Yijiao Mystical Horse suppressed his boiling blood energy and glared at Luo Zhan like a tiger eyeing its prey. He grinned hideously and said, "Old man, you have some skills. However, if you want to pass through me, Yijiao, there is no way." Luo Zhan felt a wave of helplessness in his heart. Looking at the encirclement coming from all directions, he knew that it would be extremely difficult to successfully break through today. Turning his head, his gaze rested on Qin Wushuang. Suddenly he thought, this Qin Wushuang has been hiding far away, not daring to come over and fight. His own cultivation was definitely inferior to these spirit beasts. I can let him enter the battle and seize the opportunity to capture him. A rare commodity worth hoarding. As long as we capture Qin Wushuang, we will have the initiative in our hands. Thinking of this, Luo Zhan felt a wave of joy in his heart. He knew that this was his best choice at the moment and also his only chance. If he could not obtain this opportunity, he was afraid that he would die with a grievance today. Immediately, he waved his battle saber and laughed. You 3 against 1, why should I be afraid? Even if you 4 against 1, I will still take on all of you. Luo Zhan spoke boldly, but when he thought of his companions Wei Gang being defeated so easily, he was a little uncertain. However, he had no way out now. Fight. He could only fight for a way out by fighting with all his might. Thinking of this, not only did Luo Zhan not continue to run forward, but his body also descended. His momentum was very fast, and he actually dashed directly towards Qin Wushuang. Although there was still hissing Sky Phoenix between Qin Wushuang and Luo Zhan's momentum obviously ignored the existence of hissing Sky Phoenix. Hissing Sky Phoenix shouted, "Master, please step back." The 3 spirit beasts at the profound void martial stage all knew that Qin Wushuang's cultivation was only at the refined void martial stage. In such a battle, theoretically, he would not be of any use. He might even become a burden. However, Qin Wushuang was not an ordinary expert at the refined void martial stage. He roared, "Let him come over!" As he spoke, Qin Wushuang flapped his wings and the Overlord breaking formation spear swept in the air. A spear radiance was like a poisonous snake spitting out its tongue. It was extremely fast and it shot towards Luo Zhan's forehead. Qin Wushuang consecutively shot out more than 10 spears. The speed of the spear was so fast that even Luo Zhan, an expert at the profound void martial stage, felt a little surprised. Luo Zhan had never heard of such a spear force before. It actually contained different spiritual power attributes and formed various mysterious mysteries. The twisted attribute attacks were mixed together and formed a complicated attack wave that rolled towards Luo Zhan. This attack made Luo Zhan feel as if he was facing more than 10 opponents at the same time and they were all attacking him at the same time. This one spear of Qin Wushuang's seemed to have transformed into the attack characteristics of the 18 classes of weapons. It had overwhelmed Luo Zhan. Originally, with his strength at the profound void martial stage, if he was facing an attack from an ordinary expert at the refined void martial stage, he could simply ignore it. He could completely sweep it away with a sweep of his palm. However, Qin Wushuang's realm was definitely not comparable to an ordinary expert at the refined void martial stage. Qin Wushuang had been baptized by the divine path. His attack power and realm had always been much stronger than those at the same realm. This was also the biggest reason why Qin Wushuang could repeatedly contend with people at a higher realm with a lower cultivation level. Under such a powerful attack, even Luo Zhan did not dare to let down his guard at all. He stopped attacking with his long saber and guarded the door first. This was because Qin Wushuang's attacks were like poisonous snakes that seemed to be everywhere. If he did not guard the door well, he might suddenly be attacked. Luo Zhan, as an outstanding expert at the profound void martial stage, actually chose to defend when facing a cultivator at the refined void martial stage. If there were onlookers at the side, they would definitely feel inexplicably surprised. It was because this was the most common knowledge in the martial arts world. Not to mention the profound void martial stage, even an elite warrior at the transformation void martial stage could ignore the attack from an elite warrior at the refined void martial stage. After all, after entering the void martial stage, the difference between any 2 levels was apparent. It was not easy to make up for it. However, Qin Wushuang's attacks were like moving clouds and flowing water. It made it impossible for one to guess the real situation and predict his next move. Because of this, besides using his advantage in strength, Luo Zhan did not have any other choice. However, if he were to take it head-on, it would be equivalent to a lack of changes and a passive reaction. The power of the attack would be greatly reduced. Since Qin Wushuang had the advantage of the purple cloud in yang wings, He was not afraid of Luo Zhan's attack. Especially for such passive counterattack, he could not unleash 100% of his power. He lifted his wings slightly and his body disappeared before Luo Zhan like a cool breeze. In the next moment, Luo Zhan only felt a sudden attack from behind. Qin Wushuang held the spear with one hand and opened his 5 fingers with the other hand. As each of his fingers shot out, the sword qi of the gang sword from the coagulated sword kept shooting out. Qin Wushuang felt as if he was pulling the trigger and shooting out bullets. The power of this gang sword was extraordinary. Even an elite warrior at the profound void martial stage would not dare to take a hit from it. Behind the large and open attacks of this coagulated sword, there was an agility and lightness that weapons did not possess. To Luo Zhan, such rapid attacks were the most difficult to bear. Luo Zhan waved his battle blade and rolled out waves of blade shields in front of him to protect the vital parts of his body. Inwardly, he was both anxious and angry. He realized that perhaps it was Qin Wushuang's plan to lure Luo Ba and Luo Xing away. He wanted to separate the 4 elite warriors at the profound void martial stage and achieve the goal of dividing their power. In this way, Qin Wushuang and the others could concentrate on dealing with the 2 of them and defeat them in batches. Thinking of this, Luo Zhan looked up to the sky and let out a long howl. His battle blade danced even more fiercely. He knew that at this moment, the most important thing was to not lose his footing. Once he lost his footing, he would be easily defeated by the opponent. Only now did Luo Zhan realize that Qin Wushuang, who came from the human countries, did have some skills. No wonder Luo Ting, such an outstanding young man, also fell in his hands. Even he, who was experienced, felt extremely uncomfortable facing Qin Wushuang's endless attack method. This kind of discomfort was not the helplessness when facing an absolute elite. He clearly felt that he could defeat Qin Wushuang, but he did not launch an attack comfortably. From the beginning, it seemed that the initiative of the battle did not belong to him. This kind of battle made Luo Zhan feel that he could not display his power. This Qin Wushuang, relying on a pair of wings and a whole body of strange attack methods, was actually able to make Luo Ting feel that he could not win easily without using the graceful spiritual bow. Not being able to win under this kind of situation was synonymous with failure, because beside him, there were 3 profound void martial stage spirit beasts that were eyeing him covetously and could attack him at any time. Any one of these 3 profound void martial stage spirit beasts was enough to make him fall into a difficult battle, not to mention that there were 3 of them at the same time, plus this abnormal Qin Wushuang. The anxiety in Luo Zhan's heart grew heavier and heavier. He repeatedly howled in an attempt to call Luo Ba and Luo Xing back. If the 3 profound void martial stage elders joined forces, he might not be able to win, but the situation would be much easier. He could also calmly deal with them. Whether to fight or to retreat, he would have sufficient choice. Qin Wushuang kept changing his moves and used his previous consummate skills one after another. As Qin Wushuang's realm continued to increase, the power of these ultimate skills would naturally continue to be developed. They would not be inferior just because of the increase in level. This was especially true for the Heavenly Pulse Condensed Sword, which had a distribution of realms, making it even easier to use. On the other hand, rather than calling it a move, it would be better to call it a mental cultivation method. To be precise, it was a combat skill. Qin Wushuang wielded the spear in one hand and the coagulated sword in the other. Together with the purple cloud yin-yang wings, the more he fought, the more he learned. He felt calm and confident, as if he was not facing a profound void martial artist, but a cultivator of the same level. This kind of confidence was an invisible increase in his realm. At this moment, Qin Wushuang was still slow to realize what had happened. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 525. However, it was this hindsight that allowed Qin Wushuang to grasp the essence of the void martial stage. The void martial stage was not the spiritual martial force. It was no longer about the accumulation of spiritual qi. The spiritual martial force was only the stage of the accumulation of spiritual qi. When the spiritual qi had formed the essence in the dantian and condensed into the primordial spirit, it would be the void martial stage. The core of the void martial stage was the word void. This word meant that the training of the void martial stage was no longer about the continuous accumulation of spiritual qi. It had already passed the stage of the accumulation of spiritual qi. The advancement of the void martial stage relied on the consolidation and continuous tempering of the primordial spirit. In tempering the primordial spirit, the training of the dantian was one aspect. Comprehension and meditation were another aspect. In the primordial spirit stage, it was possible for one to gain some insight during training. It was also possible for one to suddenly realize something while walking. It was also possible for one to have a flash of inspiration while meditating. Thus, the miraculous feeling Qin Wushuang was currently experiencing was in fact a positive sign for him in the void martial stage. It was also a qualitative change that he had accumulated through continuous quantitative changes. This was a fortuitous opportunity. Of course, at this moment, Qin Wushuang did not think too much about these things. Instead, he was immersed in this great battle. To him, this battle was not a life and death battle, but a form of enjoyment. Qin Wushuang became more courageous as the battle went on. Each of his moves was easy and relaxed. If it were someone who did not know the truth, they would have an illusion when they saw this battle. They would feel that this was a battle between two elite warriors of the same level, and not a battle between two elite warriors with a difference of 2 levels. Compared to Qin Wushuang's relaxed manner, Luo Zhan even had the heart to die. He never thought that he would be forced into a dilemma by a young man. Of course, it was not because he was not strong enough, but because he could not unleash his full power. Firstly, it was because of Qin Wushuang's restraint. Secondly, it was because of the 3 profound void martial stage spiritual beasts eyeing him covetously. The pressure from these 2 aspects caused Luo Zhan to be unable to fully unleash his abilities. The 3 spiritual beasts at the profound void martial stage were also in awe. Obviously, they didn't expect that their master, whose cultivation level was obviously lower than his opponent's, could be on par with him. Although he had the advantage of the purple cloud yin-yang wings, it was enough for a refined void martial stage cultivator to make a profound void martial stage cultivator so embarrassed. Pure altar precious pig was the first to lose his patience. The fat on his body shook exaggeratedly as he roared, "Master, this old pig will pig you!" Treasure Pig took large strides and rushed into the air, striking with both fists. His fist whistled through the air and smashed toward Luo Zhan's face. This kind of attack was simple and crude, but it was also the most practical. When the fist smashed over, Luo Zhan only felt a stifling sensation in his chest. It was as if the surrounding airflow had been swept up by the astral winds of this fist and condensed into this fist as it blasted over. The ripples in the void vibrated, and a protruding vortex appeared. Of course, it was impossible for Luo Zhan to take this punch head-on, because at this moment, any head-on collision could cause him to take a step closer to the abyss of death. The other party had 3 spiritual beasts at the profound void martial stage. They had enough capital to take turns to fight him and exhaust his spiritual power. Luo Zhan quickly retreated along with the fist aura, opening a path with his battle saber. Obviously, He was on guard against the pincer attack of one-horned mythical beast and hissing sky phoenix. However, being surrounded like this, it was extremely difficult for him to avoid being attacked from all sides. Therefore, although he seemed to have retreated, in fact, he didn't escape from any danger. Hissing sky phoenix and one-horned mythical beast flanked him from both sides and rushed over. Qin Wushuang's purple cloud in yang wings were like a ghost, and he had already arrived in front of Luo Zhan. With his 5 fingers raised, the gang sword shot out continuously like bullet. The speed was so fast that it was as if raindrops were falling down on one's face. Luo Zhan was so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He activated his genuine qi again and whistled continuously. He was also puzzled as to why Luo Ba and Luo Xing had not returned from chasing those 2 fellows with mediocre strength. How would he know that those 2 fellows with mediocre strength were actually the jade hare and the mole in human form? These 2 spiritual beasts were most proficient in the art of topography. Naturally, they could easily lead Luo Ba and Luo Xing to play hide-and-seek and lure them away from the battlefield. Therefore, no matter how Luo Zhan whistled, he didn't get any response. While he was distracted, he felt a sharp pain in his shoulder. A young rush sword had shot into his shoulder blade. The power of the coagulated sword was not to be underestimated, especially the gang sword that was condensed. It was even more powerful. Luo Zhan's heart twitched. He rushed forward without caring about anything else. He threw a spiritual talisman into the air and wanted to escape with the help of the spiritual talisman. At this moment, the pure altar precious pig behind him opened its mouth and breathed out a puff of smoke. It directly enveloped the surrounding airflow and formed an absolute vacuum state. With this suction, the spiritual talisman that Luo Zhan threw out didn't even have time to activate before it was sucked away by the precious pig's powerful suction force. Almost at the same time, the one-horned mystical horse had already arrived. With an imposing manner that could break everything, it drilled into Luo Zhan's chest. Luo Zhan's body rose continuously. He slashed at the one-horned mystical light and borrowed the momentum to rush upwards. Boom! The hissing sky phoenix's sharp claws directly clawed down. Countless claws condensed in the air pressed down one after another. Luo Zhan, accept your fate, Qin Wushuang said resolutely. The Overlord formation-breaking spear was fully activated and pierced towards Luo Zhan's throat. Suddenly, he pushed with both hands. A circular vortex of airflow pushed the Overlord formation-breaking spear up and out. The pushing force instantly increased the Overlord formation-breaking spear's speed by more than 10 times. This was the evolution of the deep core style. Qin Wushuang pushed out all the deep core force with the spear's movement speed as the priority. Like an arrow leaving the bow, the spear pierced towards Luo Zhan's neck with all its might. Luo Zhan was besieged by 3 spiritual beasts and had nowhere to escape. With a cry of "Aya!" he shrunk his neck and was about to evade. However, even if he could evade the first move, how could he evade Qin Wushuang's second move? Unknowingly, Qin Wushuang had followed the same pattern with the violet sun sword and shot towards Luo Zhan's chest. With a poof sound, suddenly, Luo Zhan's pupils contracted rapidly. It seemed that his entire body had been fixed in place. Suddenly, he stopped in the middle of the air and different complicated colors flashed across his eyes. Despair and anger came in waves. He swung the battle blade from his hand and slashed at the enemy with all his strength. Qin Wushuang gave a contemptuous smile. He flapped his wings and flew more than 300 meters away. Rising and falling, he appeared confident and at ease. Luo Zhan felt sorrowful as he watched him. Every generation had new talents. Just as Luo Zhan was on the verge of death, he realized that he was already old. He could no longer stop the rise of the younger generation. This Qin Wushuang. Without a doubt, he would become a source of disaster for the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Luo Zhan only felt that his dantian was shrinking. Inside his dantian, his primordial spirit was rapidly retreating. This was the sign of death, and it was a death that not even a divine being could save. At this time, Luo Zhan no longer had the time to worry about his own life. He had tried everything, yet he was powerless to send his spiritual perception to the Tao warrior of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect through the communication jade plate. Carrying unwillingness and anger, Luo Zhan's breathing gradually stopped. He fell to the ground in despair and raised a cloud of dust. An elite warrior at the profound void martial stage had fallen like this in this nameless valley. Qin Wushuang withdrew his stance and instructed, "Heavenly Phoenix, you are in charge of taking care of the aftermath. Bao Bao, you go help Lone. Guard the front with him, and don't let any random people come in. I will take them and regroup with Mole, Jade Hair and the others. The other two are still waiting for us to take care of them." Bao Bao laughed. With this leader dead, the rest is much easier to take care of. Currently, Luo Ba and Luo Xing were feeling extremely helpless because of Mole and Jade Hair. Despite the rising anger in their heart, they could not do anything. In terms of strength, they were all elite warriors at the profound void martial stage and were certainly stronger than Mole and Jade Hair. However, Jade Hair and Mole had a unique advantage. In such a game, they could not unleash their strength. When they were exhausted from chasing after them, they realized that they were already rushing back. While they were feeling surprised, one horn mystical horse had already arrived. Pure Altar Precious Pig also followed after him. After Hissing Sky Phoenix had finished taking care of the aftermath, he also joined the battle group. It was much easier to take care of these two. Qin Wushuang did not even need to make a move and victory was already in his hands. These two fought like trapped beasts. In the end, they could not resist the advantage of numbers and both died with grievances. Up to this point, all four elite warriors at the profound void martial stage outside the Morning Sun Town had fallen. To the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, this was definitely a huge blow. Although to the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, the profound void martial stage was not a fatal loss, elite warriors at this level were the backbone of the sect. With four of them dead, it was a great loss. When Bao Bao and Lone saw that the battle had ended, they came to regroup. Bao Bao said excitedly, "Boss, this is a good strategy. Ha ha ha, when the heavenly Luo Taoist sect chased after us we killed a few of them. That's right, boss, we must fight this way." Initially, the core of this strategy that Qin Wushuang had thought of was to separate the four of them. From there, they would gather all of their advantages and attack two of them together. This would achieve the effect of breaking them one by one. Each part of this strategy, including the dialogue and the route they would take, had been carefully designed according to the map. Thus, when used, Luo Zhan and the others had fallen into the trap without realizing it. The expression of Luo Ba and Luo Xing before their death had explained everything. Clearly, they would never have dreamed that this was a trap set up by Qin Wushuang. When they had realized the situation, they were already on their last breaths and struggling on the verge of death. After killing the four people, the situation at the scene was too desperate. After Qin Wushuang had destroyed the bodies, he did not spend any effort to restore the scene. It was because with such a messy situation, it would be impossible to restore it to its original state. Sooner or later, people of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect would also discover this place. However, at the moment, Qin Wushuang needed to cherish time as if it was gold. He needed to catch the enemy by surprise and gain the initiative by striking first. Thus, Qin Wushuang did not linger. After he had cleaned up the mess, he rushed towards the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com to read more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 526. The distance between the Danxia Prefecture and the Divine Brilliance Prefecture was also extremely far. However, once he arrived at the Divine Brilliance Prefecture, he would not be far from the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Thus, although Qin Wushuang was not heading directly to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, in fact, he was only taking a detour. The extra journey would not affect the journey too much. This journey would take at least a month. Along the way, Qin Wushuang was studying the map Lu Xianlu had given him. This map was hidden inside the observant finger jade plate. Although it was not a big map, it had marked many important geographical locations. Although Qin Wushuang did not know what kind of map it was, he knew that it was not ordinary. Or else, Lu Xianlu would not have treated it with such seriousness. On the other hand, the main elite warriors of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect had set up an inescapable net around the Danxia Prefecture. They did not know that Qin Wushuang had already broken through their defense line and left. On the third day after the incident, Luo Tongtian arrived at the Danxia Prefecture and started to contact all the elite warriors. He discovered that there was no news from the four elders at the Morning Sun Town. Instantly, Luo Tongtian realized that something was wrong. He did not have the time to find Lu Xianlu and rushed to the Morning Sun Town immediately. Although Qin Wushuang had already cleaned up the scene, traces of the battle still existed. Only, since he did not find the bodies, it made Luo Tongtian wonder if something had happened to those four elders. After observing the scene, Luo Tongtian and the other higher-ups of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect were certain that a great battle had occurred at this place. Currently, they could not contact Luo Zhan and the other three. A strange sense of crisis spread out from the bottom of Luo Tongtian's heart. Head Dao warrior, Luo Zhan is considered a core figure of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. If it weren't for special circumstances, he would not have left his post, and it would be impossible to contact him. I am afraid that this situation is not good. This person was Tian Mingshan, the third Dao warrior who had been in charge of this encirclement. This person was the publicly recognized number 3 figure in the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. His strength was only second to the head Dao warrior and the second Dao warrior at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. Although he had not entered the exquisite mysterious boundary stage, he was unquestionably the strongest among the perfect void martial stage. He was already on the path of a breakthrough and could enter the exquisite mysterious boundary stage at any moment. Luo Tongtian remained silent. He tried to use the communication jade token to contact Luo Zhan again, but to no avail. Not long after, Luo Tongtian opened his mouth and said, "Looks like Luo Zhan and the others are already doomed." Although everyone had already vaguely guessed this possibility, but when these words came out of Luo Tongtian's mouth, it still made them palpitate. 4 profound void stage elders died just like that. Head Dao warrior, Luo Zhan and the others are all profound void martial artists, and there are 4 of them. Although there are many elite warriors in the Xian Yuan Mound, not many of them could kill an elite warrior at the profound void martial stage, right? If 4 profound void martial stage martial artists died in the hands of the same person, then it had to be at least someone in the exquisite profound realm to be able to do it. Even if one was at the perfect void martial stage, it would be almost impossible to kill 4 profound void martial stage warriors at once. After all, these 4 living people were not living targets. They would not have waited to be killed in the same place. Could it be the heavenly Emperor Qin clan again? Another elder said angrily. Rich murderous intentions flashed across Luo Tongtian's eyes as he waved his hand. This Morning Sun Town is a remote place. If the heavenly Emperor Qin clan were to attack the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, certainly they would not have chosen Luo Zhan and the others. The others were not attacked at all. I am only worried that it was still Qin Wushuang and his group that killed Luo Zhan and the others. Qin Wushuang again? Everyone's eyes were filled with disbelief. especially Tian Mingshan, the third Dao warrior, as he said with astonishment. Head Dao warrior, we have collected all the information about that Qin Wushuang. Regardless of how fast he has improved his strength, certainly he does not have the power to kill 4 elite warriors at the profound void martial stage at once. Information? There was a trace of displeasure in Luo Tongtian's tone. Could it be that Luo Ting's death did not give everyone enough warning? If the information was terrifying, how could Luo Ting have died at the hands of Qin Wushuang? At that time, according to our information, Qin Wushuang was only an ant that had not even entered the void martial stage. What was the result? Luo Ting was chased by this Qin Wushuang for 100,000 miles and still, he did not escape with his life. That Qin Wushuang had summoned 3 spiritual beasts at the profound void martial stage out of nowhere. Whenever Luo Tongtian remembered Luo Ting's cry for help before his death, his heart ached. Luo Ting's death had dealt a tremendous blow to the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. In the Xian Yuan Mound, who was not laughing at the heavenly Luo Taoist sect? Who did not know that the heavenly Luo Taoist sect had tried to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it? On the contrary, a kid from the human countries had killed their most prided successor, Luo Ting? Head Dao warrior, this way, this Qin Wushuang has already developed into a great calamity for the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. From Tian Mingshan's tone, there was a trace of unwillingness. Indeed, to allow a kid from the human countries to turn the heavenly Luo Taoist sect into such an embarrassing situation, this matter was truly vexing and embarrassing. Just thinking about it made him furious. Mingshan, is there any movement from the human countries? After all, Luo Tongtian was the leader of a sect. Naturally, he would not grumble unnecessarily under such circumstances. Tian Mingshan said, "Our people have already infiltrated the human countries through various channels. Regardless of investigating openly or secretly, we have all kinds of methods. However, that Qin Wushuang had clearly made all the preparations. His family in the secular world, and his elite warriors of the sect have all disappeared. Up to this point, we have found nothing." Nothing? When he heard these words, Tian Mingshan's heart burned with anger. Since when had the mere human countries become such a hard bone to chew? Head Dao warrior, for sure that Qin Wushuang had made all the arrangements. His secular family, the heavenly King Manor, only had those servants, the advisors, and the army of the King Manor. As for Qin Wushuang's father, sister, and those death warriors, they were not at the mansion. And Qin Wushuang's sect, the Stargaze Palace, from the palace master to the core disciples and the higher-ups, were not at the Stargaze Palace. When Tian Mingshan said here, clearly, he felt somewhat resentful. How could this Qin Wushuang look like someone from the human countries? Even those major sects of the Xian Yuan Mound were not this difficult to deal with. Of course, this was also related to the fact that they had not paid enough attention in the beginning. Now, they had paid enough attention and even the head Dao warrior had stepped out. However, this Qin Wushuang had already taken care of the aftermath. By the time they had reacted, they had already arrived empty-handed. Luo Tongtian said in a low voice, "Last time, those freelance martial artists were driven by Luo Ting's plan and rushed to the human countries. They were intercepted and killed at the dispersed praying mountain. This time, did our people pass through unhindered? It was unhindered, not even a fly. Head Dao warrior, for sure, the people intercepted at the dispersed praying mountain were Qin Wushuang's group. Now, since he had taken care of the aftermath, of course he would not ambush us at the dispersed praying mountain. Besides, he must have expected that the elite warriors we sent this time would not be people he could stop. This kid is extremely cunning." Luo Tongtian suppressed the anger inside his heart and said with an extremely complicated tone, "Qin Wushuang, I've said it before, I'll definitely make you suffer a fate worse than death. Mingshan, when the second Tao warrior returns from the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, everything will become clear. Just wait. Luo Tongtian had sent Luo Henji, the second Tao warrior, to visit the Heavenly Punishing Villa and the Sound of Thunder sect. To put it bluntly, he was colluding with these two first-tier powerhouses and preparing to join the ranks to deal with the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Luo Tongtian knew better than anyone that for sure, these two powerhouses wished for the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect to join. After all, in these 1,000 years of conflict, although these two powerhouses held the upper hand, they could not destroy the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Now, with a major powerhouse like the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect taking the initiative to join, what reason would they have to refuse? Since they had no reason to refuse, then what reason would they have to refuse if Luo Tongtian wanted to borrow something from them? Head Tao warrior, perhaps these two powerhouses will let us join the group to deal with the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. However, they should not be so idle as to help us deal with Qin Wushuang, a figure from the human countries, right? Tian Mingshan appeared somewhat lacking in confidence. Luo Tongtian said with a cold sneer. Mingshan, although Qin Wushuang is from the human countries, he has already revealed his talent. With his rapid rise, I am afraid those two powerhouses would not wish to see a great calamity grow under their eyes, right? Even if they do not interfere, could it be that the Heavenly Luo Daoist sect cannot deal with a human kid? I don't need them to do it themselves. As long as the Heavenly Punishing Villa is willing to lend their Heavenly Punishing Hawk to us, with the little human countries, even if they hide underground, the Heavenly Punishing Hawk can find them. The divine eye of the Heavenly Punishing Hawk is not ordinary. The Heavenly Punishing Hawk was the guardian spiritual beast of the Heavenly Punishing Villa. Although it had not entered the Supreme Tao stage, it was a spiritual beast at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. Plus, the Heavenly Punishing Hawk possessed the bloodline of an ancient spiritual beast. Although its bloodline might not be comparable to Bao Bao's immemorial spiritual monkey bloodline, it was still extraordinary. Although this beast was at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage, no one would doubt that sooner or later, this Heavenly Punishing Hawk would enter the Supreme Tao stage. As soon as Tian Mingshan heard the name of the Heavenly Punishing Hawk, he was overjoyed. Head Tao warrior, if we can borrow the Heavenly Punishing Hawk, that little matter in the human countries would be as easy as turning one's hand. For sure, we can pull out all 3 generations of Qin Wushuang from the dark. A trace of a cold sneer emerged from the corner of Luo Tongtian's mouth. I think it will take some time for Second to return from there. Currently, the plan is to capture Qin Wushuang, the main culprit, and bring him to justice. Mingshan, fellow Taoists, you will continue to be in charge. I will go meet that old friend. When Luo Tongtian said here, his tone was filled with a form of eerie. Clearly, the old friend he was referring to was Lu Xianlu, his old enemy. Luo Tongtian knew that the observant finger jade plate in Lu Xianlu's possession was the key to whether he could capture Qin Wushuang. Although the Heavenly Punishing Hawk could help him capture this Qin Wushuang, Luo Tongtian knew clearly that even if he was willing to lend the Heavenly Punishing Hawk, it would not come this quickly. With a delay, by the time he could borrow the Heavenly Punishing Hawk, perhaps Qin Wushuang would have already escaped to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Regardless of how strong his Heavenly Luo Daoist sect was, they did not have the skill to chase and kill Qin Wushuang at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 527. As long as he had that observant finger jade plate, Luo Tongtian would have absolute assurance to dig out Qin Wushuang from within the Xian Yuan mound. Time was running out and Luo Tongtian did not want to delay. After all, if he delayed for another 15 minutes, it would give Qin Wushuang another 15 minutes of time to escape. He must acquire that observant finger jade plate as soon as possible. Or else, it would mean that the possibility of Qin Wushuang entering the Heavenly Emperor Mountain would increase. After the assignment, just as Luo Tongtian was about to dismiss everyone, suddenly, a wave of information came from the communication jade plate. It was an urgent message sent by an elder through his spiritual perception. Head Dao warrior, urgent information. Someone saw Murong Su appear at the Full Moon Prefecture. Full Moon Prefecture? The head Dao warrior was stunned. That Full Moon Prefecture was not far from the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. One could almost say that it was the only way to enter the Heavenly Emperor Mountain. Why did she go to that Full Moon Prefecture? When talking about this, Murong Su, head Dao warrior Luo Tongtian also had a belly full of anger. If it weren't for this Murong Su, Luo Ting would not have taken it to heart. He would not have left the heavenly Luo Daoist sect to find trouble with Qin Wushuang. Since ancient times, people had always said that beautiful women were the source of trouble. Now Luo Tongtian had experienced it deeply. That elder said, "I don't know what she wants to do. She keeps her whereabouts a secret. It seems that she is afraid of being discovered." With a gloomy expression, Luo Tongtian instructed, "Regardless of what she wants to do, monitor her movements closely. Report to me at any time." After a long journey, Qin Wushuang finally entered the territory of the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. Currently, the heavenly Luo Daoist sect had entered a frenzied state to hunt him down. Across the entire Xian Yuan mound, almost all elite warriors of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect had moved out. All kinds of bounties had also increased. However, no one expected that Qin Wushuang had already arrived at the headquarters of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. Along the way, he had passed through countless prefectures. After trekking for almost 3 months, he had finally entered the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. Lu Xianluo's map was a part of the terrain of the Divine Brilliance Prefecture. For the past few months, Qin Wushuang had been studying the map in addition to cultivating. One day, in the territory of the Divine Brilliance Prefecture, Qin Wushuang stood beside a flowing river and said, "This river should be the Flowing Cloud River, right?" The Flowing Cloud River was clearly marked on the map, and the Flowing Cloud River flowed eastward. Qin Wushuang and the others followed the Flowing Cloud River and soon found the second location on the map. This location was called Lion King's Ridge. It was the most dangerous and desolate area in the entire Divine Brilliance Prefecture. There were very few people living within 1,000 miles of it. "Boss, just what does that Mr. Lu Xianlu want to tell us through this map?" Bao Bao asked with confusion. Qin Wushuang said, "Mr. Lu Xianlu doesn't seem to be the kind of person who does things without rhyme or reason. Since he secretly gave me the map, he must have his own plans." From the conversation between him and that kid from the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, Lu Xianlu and the heavenly Luo Daoist sect should share an irreconcilable hatred. "Boss, that Lu Xianlu seems to know about your identity?" "He already knows, he just didn't expose me." Qin Wushuang recalled the situation at that time. That Lu Xianluo's implied meaning was obvious. Only, everyone was smart and did not expose each other. "Look, this is the Lion King's Ridge. This place is only a few thousand miles away from the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. If we follow this Lion King's Ridge, we should arrive at the Dark Wind Valley." There were many important locations marked on this map. However, this Dark Wind Valley was the most prominent and eye-catching one. Qin Wushuang guessed that this Dark Wind Valley should be the place Lu Xianlu wanted him to find through the map. Although it was only 2,000 or 3,000 miles to reach the Dark Wind Valley from the Lion King's Ridge, They must pass through the entire Lion King's ridge. Thus, it appeared extremely dangerous. Along the way, Qin Wushuang did not dare to let down his guard. He did not want to disturb those spiritual beasts that were hibernating at the Lion King's ridge. This Lion King's ridge was a dangerous place where spiritual beasts roamed. Usually, disciples of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect would come to this Lion King's ridge to train if they needed to. Thus, to the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, this Lion King's ridge was an extremely important location. Along the way, Qin Wushuang flew out of the Lion King's ridge and arrived at the dark wind valley that was shrouded in black fog. Since this dark wind valley was connected to the Lion King's ridge, in fact, it was the continuation of the Lion King's ridge. It was also an extremely dangerous place. Throughout the year, this dark wind valley was shrouded in black fog. When Qin Wushuang looked down from the sky, he could only see the dense fog and could not see the details of the dark wind valley. He could only feel the general outline of the dark wind valley. Indeed, this dark wind valley was a dangerous place. Also, it was extremely vast and he could not see the end of it. It seems that the place Mr. Lu Xianlu had found is not ordinary. Let's fly a little lower and see what kind of scenery this dark wind valley has. As Qin Wushuang spoke, he lowered his wings and descended above the dark wind valley. However, Bao Bao laughed. "Boss, could it be you can't see the scenery inside the dark wind valley?" "You can see it?" Qin Wushuang was surprised. Bao Bao's eyes lit up. Like a burning torch, waves of strange red lights emerged from his pupils. This red light seemed to possess a strong penetrating power as it shot out directly. In fact, he was able to see the scene of the dark wind valley clearly. Bao Bao said, "Boss, I can feel it clearly. Lone, can you see it?" "My vision is blurry. How could I see anything? There are only layers of smoke." Bao Bao was somewhat surprised. "Boss, I can really see it." When Qin Wushuang saw the strange lights flashing in Bao Bao's eyes, he did not find it strange. Instead, he said, "Bao Bao, what stage have you practiced the pupil attachment technique to?" As soon as Bao Bao heard the words pupil attachment technique, suddenly, he understood something. He slapped his thigh and said, "Boss, I remember now. When I was practicing the pupil attachment technique, under the wild flame cliff, each time I felt my vision became clearer and more detailed. And there seemed to be two strange flaming lights flashing in my eyes. Could it be the divine perception stage of the pupil attachment technique?" The first few realms of the pupil attachment technique were just simple methods of attaching eyes. As the realms got higher and higher, the pupil attachment technique would open the eye of gods, allowing the cultivator to reach an even more perverse level in their eye of gods technique. And for an extremely heaven-defying beast like Bao Bao, he had used the unique terrain of the wild flame cliff to practice the divine fire eyes. The power of this divine fire eyes was extraordinary. Not only could he see 1,000 miles away, he could also see through the darkness as if it was daytime. He could see through the water surface to the riverbed and through the walls to see the other side. Naturally, he could easily see through this disgusting technique to see the situation inside the dark wind valley. At the same time, while practicing the pupil attachment technique, Lone's stage was much lower than Bao Bao's. Naturally, this was related to his bloodline. More importantly, this pupil attachment technique was extremely compatible with Bao Bao's own conditions. Thus, he could achieve such a heaven-defying effect in a short time. Qin Wushuang was extremely gratified as he said to Bao Bao, "Bao Bao, is your vision not affected at all?" "Boss, in terms of vision compared to the outside, for sure there is a difference. However, I can truly see through this dark wind valley." "Okay, Bao Bao, then you will be in charge of leading the way." Qin Wushuang was overjoyed at the unexpected good news. For this dark wind valley, he had an intuition that this place was definitely not ordinary. It concealed an extremely important secret. Perhaps this secret was a disguised form of entrustment from Lu Xianlu. Bao Bao took the lead and led Qin Wushuang to descend into the dark wind valley. Before they had taken a few steps, suddenly, a wave of fishy wind blew over from the side. Next, a giant tongue spat out a wave of pungent stench and coiled around Qin Wushuang's waist. A giant strip-shaped spiritual beast that seemed to be a giant spiritual snake or a lizard-type monster spat out saliva from its mouth and charged over from the sky. Qin Wushuang had always been on high alert. Now, with the fishy wind opening the way, how could Qin Wushuang suffer any losses? He waved the hegemon breaking formation spear and spun out a giant arc to protect his body within a safe area. He raised his other hand and shot out 5 or 6 gang swords from the coagulated sword technique. Pooh! With continuous poo-poo sounds, it emitted a muffled collision sound as if arrows had hit leather. Each of Qin Wushuang's gang swords hit the body of that monster. Although the body of that monster was huge, its movements were not stiff. It shook its head a few times and blocked all the power of this gang swords with its powerful body. Despite the ferocious power of that gang swords, it could only scratch the skin of this monster. It was apparent how terrifying the defense of this monster's skin was. After being scratched by Qin Wushuang's gang swords, that monster's ferocious nature was stimulated. It roared towards the sky and opened its bloody mouth. With a hissing sound, a wave of black air spurted out like a poisonous fog towards Qin Wushuang. At such a close distance, of course, Qin Wushuang saw it clearly. He immediately flapped his wings and dodged the spurting black air. That monster roared towards the sky and stood upright. When it stood upright, instantly, Qin Wushuang felt a wave of coldness. This monster's body was indeed huge. It was as tall as a 5-story building in his previous life. Although it was called a huge python, it had obvious limbs. Although it was called a lizard, it had a ferocity that even a lizard could not compare to. The monster roared towards the sky and opened its mouth, revealing 2 rows of razor-sharp teeth. As it opened and closed its mouth, more than 10 rays of sword qi shot out from both sides of its teeth. They formed a crisscrossing attack that cut towards Qin Wushuang like a pair of scissors. Qin Wushuang secretly praised this beast. He did not dare to be careless. His wings shot up again and he flew into the air. For a moment, he did not dare to dive down rashly. He realized that this monster might be even harder to deal with than Luozhan. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.